The whip cracked like a rifle shot across the frozen Wyoming morning. Cole Brennan heard it from a quarter-mile away, cutting through the wind that howled across the white expanse. He'd been riding the eastern boundary of his ranch, checking fence lines that had weathered the brutal January storms, his mind on ordinary things: hay stores, cattle counts, the endless, numbing rhythm of work that kept darker thoughts at bay. But that sound stopped him cold. His horse felt the tension in his body and halted without command, ears swiveling toward the cluster of bare cottonwoods 500 yards north. Cole squinted against the glare of sun on snow, his breath crystallizing in the 18-degree cold. At first, he saw only shadows between the skeletal trees, then movement. A dark figure. No, 3 figures, 2 standing, 1 on the ground. The whip cracked again. Cole's jaw tightened. His hand moved instinctively to the Winchester rifle in its saddle scabbard, then stopped. Not yet. Not until he knew what he was riding into. But every instinct in his body, honed by 4 years as an Army scout before he'd returned to ranching, screamed that whatever was happening in those trees was wrong. He urged his horse forward at a steady walk, not rushing, not telegraphing his approach. The wind carried away the sound of hooves on crusted snow. As he drew closer, details emerged from the white blur. 3 horses tied to low branches. 2 men, tall and thick-built, winter coats dark against the snow. And between them, tied to a cottonwood trunk, a woman. No, not a woman. A figure that had once been a woman, before cruelty had tried to strip away her humanity. Cole was close enough now to see the rawhide rope binding her wrists behind the tree. Close enough to see her clothing, torn and inadequate for the killing cold. A doeskin dress, once beautiful, now stained and ripped. No coat, no shoes, bare feet blue against white snow. Her long black hair hung forward, obscuring her face, but he could see her shoulders shake with each impact of the whip. One of the men drew back his arm, the leather sang through the air. The woman's body jerked, but she made no sound, no scream, no plea, nothing. And that silence was somehow worse than any cry could have been. "Enough!" Cole's voice cut across the distance, flat and cold as the January air. The man with the whip spun around, and Cole recognized him immediately. Virgil Cobb, 28 years old, son of Harlan Cobb, who owned half of Sheridan County through wealth, intimidation, and the kind of casual cruelty that infected men who'd never been told no. Virgil had his father's mean eyes and his mother's pretty face, a combination that made him dangerous in a different way than his father. Harlan would hurt you with a smile. Virgil would hurt you and enjoy it. Well. Virgil's lips curled into something that might have been a smile on a human face. "Cole Brennan, didn't expect to see you out this way." "Cut her loose." Cole's hand rested on his thigh, 3 inches from his holstered Colt. Not threatening, not yet, but ready. Virgil glanced at the other man, a hired gun Cole didn't recognize, then back. "This doesn't concern you, Brennan. This is property of my father. We're just teaching it a lesson about running away." Property, not her, it. Cole's eyes flicked to the woman. She'd raised her head now and he could see her face. Young, maybe mid-20s, high cheekbones, skin darker than the winter-pale complexions of Sheridan's townswomen. Apache, he realized. Her eyes met his for just a second, dark and deep as wells, holding something that looked like hope and terror, fighting each other. Then she looked away, as if expecting him to ride on, as if she'd learned that hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. Around her neck, a collar. Not leather, not rope. Iron, forged metal 2 inches wide, with a loop for a chain that wasn't currently attached. Even from 20 feet away, Cole could see the rust stains. No, not rust, blood. Where the edges had worn through skin over days or weeks or months of wearing. His chest went tight, his breathing shallow, and suddenly he wasn't in Wyoming anymore. He was in their bedroom 4 years ago, watching Sarah labor for 18 hours to bring their son into the world, watching the midwife's face grow more worried with each passing hour, watching his wife's strength ebb like water from a cracked barrel until there was nothing left. and the baby boy they'd planned to name Michael lived just 3 hours before following his mother into whatever darkness waited beyond. He'd been helpless then, completely, utterly helpless. But he wasn't helpless now. I said, "Cut her loose." His voice hadn't changed, but something in it made Virgil's smile falter. "I won't say it again."
"You threatening me, Brennan?"
Virgil's hand moved toward his own gun. "That'd be a mistake. My father has the sheriff in his pocket, the mayor, half the county. Who do you have?" "Don't need anyone else." Cole's hand didn't move. Didn't need to. The threat was in his stillness, in the absolute certainty of his tone. "Cut her loose or draw. Your choice." For 10 seconds, 15, 20, nobody moved. The wind howled. Snow began to fall, small hard flakes like thrown rice. The woman's breath came in shallow gasps, visible in the frozen air. Cole watched Virgil's eyes, watched him calculate odds, calculate consequences, calculate whether his pride was worth dying for on a frozen January morning 5 miles from anywhere that mattered. Virgil blinked first. "Fine." He pulled a knife from his belt and cut the ropes binding the woman's wrists with 2 savage slashes. "Take the Indian, bitch. But my father will hear about this, and when he does, you'll regret ever getting involved." The woman stumbled forward and collapsed into the snow. She tried to push herself up, but her arms gave out. No strength left, maybe no strength for days. Virgil and his hired gun mounted their horses. As Virgil passed Cole, close enough to touch, he leaned in. "She's been nothing but trouble since Pa bought her. Runs away every few months. Never learns. Maybe you can teach her to heel like a good dog." Then they were gone, riding south toward Sheridan, leaving tracks that the falling snow would erase within an hour. Cole dismounted slowly. The woman had managed to get to her hands and knees, but couldn't rise further. She was shaking violently now, shock and cold and exhaustion catching up. He approached carefully, like he would a wounded animal, hands visible, movements deliberate. "Ma'am?" His voice gentle now. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Cole." She didn't respond, didn't look at him. Just knelt there in the snow, head down, waiting for whatever came next. He shrugged out of his heavy winter coat and draped it over her shoulders. She flinched at the touch, but didn't pull away. Up close he could see more damage, a split lip, swollen and purple, bruises on her arms, some fresh, some fading to yellow-green. Older scars beneath those, the kind that came from systematic violence over long periods of time. But it was the collar that held his attention. Thick iron, rough-forged, with letters hammered into the metal. He leaned closer to read them. Property of H. Cobb. Something cold and dark unfurled in Cole's chest. Not anger, not yet. Something deeper. Something that had been sleeping for 4 years and was just now waking up. "Can you stand?" he asked. No response. "I have a ranch about 3 miles west. It's warm there. Food. You'll be safe." Still nothing. But after a long moment, she nodded once. Just a bare dip of her head, but it was enough. Cole helped her to her feet. She swayed, would have fallen, but he caught her elbow. She tried to pull away, instinct overriding need, but her legs buckled. He swept her up into his arms before she could protest, surprised by how little she weighed, not from natural slightness but from deprivation. He could feel her ribs through the doe-skin dress. "It's all right," he said, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to her or to himself. "I've got you." He lifted her onto his horse, then swung up behind her. She sat rigid in front of him, every muscle tense, ready to bolt or fight, despite having no energy for either. Cole wrapped one arm loosely around her waist to keep her from sliding off, took the reins with the other, and turned west toward home. They rode in silence. The snow fell harder now, thick flakes that blurred the world to shades of white and grey. Cole's mind drifted as the horse picked its way through drifts, and without meaning to, he found himself remembering. Sarah, his wife, his love, dead 4 years this past November. The memories were worn smooth now from handling, the sharpest edges dulled, but they could still cut if he held them wrong. He remembered their wedding day, Sarah in her mother's dress, ivory lace and pearl buttons, smiling so wide it seemed to split the world open. He remembered their first year in the ranch house his father had left him, learning each other's rhythms, building a life from nothing but hope and hard work. He remembered the day she told him about the baby, her eyes shining with tears of joy. And he remembered the day that joy turned to ashes. 18 hours of labor, the midwife from town doing everything she could, Sarah growing weaker with each hour, her grip on his hand gradually loosening, the baby finally coming, but too early, too small, not breathing right. Sarah never even got to hold him. She slipped away while they were trying to save Michael, and Michael followed 3 hours later, and Cole buried them both the next day in ground so frozen it took him and 3 hired men 6 hours to dig graves deep enough. After that, the ranch house had felt like a tomb, too quiet, too empty, too full of ghosts. He'd thrown himself into work, 16-hour days, until exhaustion was the only thing that let him sleep. His foreman Mateo and the old cowhand Sam had watched him with worried eyes but said nothing, understanding that grief was a thing each man had to carry alone. 4 years. 4 years of existing without living, going through motions without meaning, waiting for something he couldn't name. Maybe this was it. Maybe that something was a woman with an iron collar and eyes that held more pain than any person should have to carry. The ranch house appeared through the snow, a solid structure of timber and stone, smoke rising from the chimney, the barn beside it, the bunkhouse beyond, corrals and outbuildings, all of it covered in white, looking like a painting of winter rather than the real thing. Cole guided the horse to the main house and dismounted, then reached up to help the woman down. She was shaking harder now, teeth chattering so violently he could hear them clicking together. He needed to get her inside, get her warm, but first he needed that collar off. The front door opened and Mateo stepped out, his weathered face creasing with surprise. "Boss? I thought you were checking the east fence. Who's this?" "Get the bolt cutters from the barn," Cole said, "heavy-duty ones, and tell Elena to heat water for a bath. Then ride to town and fetch Dr. Ashford." Mateo took in the woman's condition, the collar, the bruises visible even through the coat, and his expression hardened. He'd been with Cole for 15 years, had known Sarah, had helped dig those graves 4 years ago. He asked no more questions, just nodded and headed for the barn at a run. Cole guided the woman inside, into the front room where a fire burned in the stone fireplace. The warmth hit them like a physical thing, and she gasped, swayed. He eased her into a chair near the fire, knelt in front of her. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked gently. She looked at him for a long moment, those dark eyes searching his face for something. Permission, maybe, or the trick, the trap, the moment when kindness would transform into cruelty like it always did. Finally, in a voice so quiet he had to lean in to hear, "Nailin." "Nailin," he repeated. "That's a beautiful name." Her eyes filled with tears, but none fell, as if she'd learned that crying changed nothing, that tears were just another thing that could be beaten out of you. Mateo returned with the bolt cutters, Elena right behind him with blankets and concern written across her face. Cole's housekeeper and Mateo's wife was a small woman with a big heart, and the sight of Nailin seemed to physically hurt her. "Dios mío," she breathed. "What have they done to you, poor child?" Cole positioned the bolt cutters around the collar's lock mechanism. "This is going to be loud," he warned Nailin, "and it might pull on your neck, but I'll be as careful as I can." She nodded, bracing herself. He squeezed the handles. The cutters bit into the iron with a metallic scream. Nailin flinched but didn't pull away. He applied more pressure, muscles straining, and finally the lock mechanism cracked. The collar sprang open, falling away from skin that was raw and weeping beneath it. Naylin's hand flew to her throat, touching the damaged skin with trembling fingers, as if she couldn't quite believe the collar was gone. Elena moved in immediately with a damp cloth, cleaning the wounds with gentle efficiency. "Come, Mija. Let's get you cleaned up and into warm clothes. Doctor. Ashford will be here soon." She helped Nailin to her feet and guided her toward the back bedroom, supporting most of her weight. At the doorway, Nailin looked back at Cole, her expression unreadable. Then she was gone. Cole sank into the chair she'd vacated, suddenly exhausted. The iron collar sat on the floor at his feet, an obscene thing, a piece of hell made manifest in the real world. He picked it up, felt its weight, read those hateful words again. Property of H. Cobb. Mateo stood in the doorway, hat in his hands. "I know that look, boss. That's your war face. Same one you had before that mess with the Johnson gang 5 years back." "Harlan Cobb did this to her," Cole said quietly. "He owned her. That's the word Virgil used. Owned. Cobb's a powerful man, rich, connected. He'll come for her." "Let him." Mateo studied him for a long moment. "This is about more than just helping a stranger, isn't it?" Cole set the collar down, looked at the fire. "I couldn't save Sarah."
Couldn't save Michael.
I was right there, and I couldn't do a damn thing. Just watched them slip away. He paused. "But this woman, Naylin, she's here, she's alive, and I can help her, so I will. Even if it costs you everything?" "I lost everything 4 years ago." Cole met his foreman's eyes. "Maybe this is how I start getting something back." Dr. Ashford arrived an hour later, a lean man in his 50s with kind eyes and skilled hands. He spent 30 minutes examining Naylin in the back bedroom, while Cole, Mateo, Elena, and old Sam waited in the front room, not talking, just listening to the fire crackle and the wind howl outside. When the doctor emerged, his face was grim. 3 broken ribs, healed wrong, malnutrition, dehydration, infection in the wounds on her neck, signs of prolonged physical abuse. He paused. "And evidence of recent violence I won't detail, but that makes my blood boil." "Will she recover?" Cole asked. "Physically, yes, with care and time. Mentally?" He shook his head. "That kind of trauma doesn't heal clean. She'll carry scars we can't see for the rest of her life." After the doctor left, Cole stood outside Naylin's door, hand raised to knock, then lowered it. She needed rest, not questions. Tomorrow would be soon enough to learn her story, to figure out what came next. He settled into a chair in the front room instead, intending to keep watch, just in case Cobb came tonight, just in case she needed anything, just in case. Near midnight, he heard movement from the bedroom, soft footsteps, then silence. He stayed still, giving her space, letting her explore this new environment on her own terms. Naylin appeared in the doorway, wearing one of Elena's nightgowns, several sizes too large, making her look even smaller and more fragile than she was. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face drawn. She stood there for a long moment, just looking at him. "Can't sleep?" Cole asked gently. She shook her head, took one step into the room, then another, moving like prey entering a clearing, ready to bolt at any sound. She made it halfway to the fire before her legs gave out and she sank to the floor, knees pulled to her chest, back against the wall. Cole didn't move, didn't speak, just let her be. 5 minutes passed, 10. Then, in that same quiet voice, "Why did you help me?" "Because it was the right thing to do. Men don't do things because they're right. They do things because they want something." Cole heard the weight of experience in those words. "What do you think I want?" "I don't know yet." She pulled the nightgown tighter around herself. "But I'll find out. They always show you eventually. I don't want anything from you except to know you're safe." She laughed, a bitter sound with no humor in it. "Safe? I don't remember what that feels like." Silence settled between them again. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. The fire popped and sparked.
Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled.
Then Naylin spoke again, and her voice cracked on the words. "My daughter died 3 months ago. She was 9 months old. Her name was Katie." A pause. "Harlan Cobb locked me in a cellar for 3 days because I wouldn't stop crying about my husband's death. My milk dried up. When he let me out, she was dead, starved to death while I was 10 feet away." Cole's hands clenched on the arms of his chair. "I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. No one does anything. I did something today." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the possibility of it, somewhere far down the line. He'll come for me, she said. Harlan. He always comes for me when I run. And he'll hurt you for taking what's his. You're not his. You're not anyone's. Try telling him that. I will, Cole said quietly, as many times as it takes.
They sat in silence after that.
Woman on the floor, man in the chair, both carrying ghosts neither could bury, both broken in ways that might never fully heal. But for tonight, this moment, they were here, alive. And that had to be enough. Around 3 a.m, Cole woke from a doze to the sound of muffled sobbing. Naylin was still on the floor, her face pressed against her knees, shoulders shaking with the force of her grief. Elena had come down from the loft above and sat beside her now, one arm around the younger woman's shoulders, saying nothing, just being present. Cole watched Elena stroke Naylin's hair, watched her rock her gently like a mother with a hurt child, and felt something crack open in his own chest. When was the last time he'd cried? When was the last time he'd let himself feel anything beyond the dull ache of loss? Naylin's sobs grew harder, louder, years of suppressed pain finally finding release. She cried for her daughter, for her dead husband,
For the life that had been stolen from her, piece by piece, until she was barely human in her own eyes. And Elena just held her, let her cry it out, let her break apart in a safe place for maybe the first time in 3 years. Cole stood quietly and walked outside into the frozen night, needing air, needing space. The snow had stopped. Stars burned in a clear black sky, infinite and indifferent. He stood on the porch, breath steaming, and made a silent promise to Sarah and Michael and to the woman crying inside his house. He would protect her. He would fight for her. And Harlan Cobb could bring an army if he wanted. It wouldn't matter. Some lines couldn't be crossed without consequences, and Cobb had crossed them all. When Cole came back inside, Naylin had finally cried herself into exhaustion. Elena helped her back to bed and came out a few minutes later, wiping her own eyes. That poor girl, she whispered, what she's been through. No one should survive that and still be sane. She's stronger than she looks, Cole said. She'll need to be.
Elena touched his arm. They'll come, Cole. You know they will. I know. Are you ready for that? He thought about Sarah, about Michael, about all the things he'd lost and could never get back, about the woman sleeping in his guest room who'd lost just as much or more. Yes, he said, I'm ready. As if summoned by the words, hoofbeats sounded in the pre-dawn darkness, multiple horses moving fast. Cole grabbed his rifle and stepped onto the porch, Matteo emerging from the bunkhouse with his own weapon. 3 riders approached through the grey light. Cole recognized the one in the center immediately, even from 100 yards away. Harlan Cobb sat his horse like a king on a throne, broad-shouldered and silver-haired, dressed in expensive clothes that made him look more like a banker than a rancher. Behind him rode Sheriff Douglas Wade and another of Harlan's hired men. They stopped 20 feet from the porch.
Harlan's smile was cold and didn't reach his eyes.
Morning, Grennan. Lovely day for a conversation.
Cole said nothing, just waited.
My son tells me you interfered with ranch business yesterday. Took something that belongs to me. Took a woman who was being beaten.
Took my property, Harlan corrected.
That Indian girl signed a contract, legal and binding. She works for me until her debt is paid. You're harboring stolen goods. She's not goods, she's a person. She's an Apache. Harlan said it like the word itself was filthy. And the law's pretty clear on this. Sheriff Wade, tell him. The sheriff, a weak-chinned man in his late 40s, shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. Mr. Cobb has papers, contract signed 3 years ago. She's legally bound to his household until the debt is satisfied. How much is the debt? Cole asked. Harlan's smile widened. $2,000, plus interest. Call it $3,000 now. A fortune. More than most men made in 5 years.
I'll pay it, Cole said.
Harlan's smile vanished. What? $3,000. I'll buy out her contract. You get your money, she goes free. For a moment, Harlan just stared. Then he laughed, a harsh bark of sound. You don't have that kind of money, Brennan. And even if you did, she's not for sale. Not to you, not to anyone. Why not? The mask slipped, just for a second, but Cole saw the truth underneath. This wasn't about money or contracts or legal obligations. This was about power, about ownership, about a man who got off on breaking something beautiful and would never willingly give that up. "Get off my land," Cole said quietly. "This isn't over," Harlan warned. "I'll be back with a judge's order, and when I take her, I'll make sure she remembers what happens to girls who run." He turned his horse and rode away, the sheriff and hired gun following. Cole watched until they disappeared over the southern ridge, then went back inside. The fight had begun, and there was no going back now. Naylin didn't come out of the bedroom for 2 days. Elena brought her food 3 times a day, left it outside the door, and retrieved empty plates an hour later. Cole caught glimpses of her through the window when he worked in the yard, a shadow moving behind curtains, there and gone like smoke. He didn't push, didn't knock, just went about his work and waited. On the 3rd morning, he found her in the kitchen before dawn. She stood at the window watching the eastern sky lighten from black to deep blue to the pale gold that preceded sunrise. She wore one of Elena's simple dresses, dark blue calico that hung loose on her thin frame. Her feet were bare despite the cold floor. Her hair, freshly washed, fell past her shoulders in waves that caught the lamplight. She didn't turn when he entered, but her shoulders tensed. Fight or flight, always calculating. "Coffee?" Cole asked, keeping his voice low and even. A pause, then a small nod. He poured 2 cups from the pot on the stove, set one on the counter within her reach, but not close enough to force interaction. They stood in silence, drinking coffee as the world outside transformed from night to day. A companionable quiet, or maybe just 2 damaged people who understood that sometimes words were unnecessary. Finally, Naylin spoke. "Why haven't you asked me questions?" "Figured you'd talk when you were ready." "Most men wouldn't wait." "I'm not most men." She turned to look at him then, really look at him, her dark eyes searching his face with an intensity that felt almost physical. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied something, because the tension in her shoulders eased slightly. "Harlan Cobb killed my husband 3 years ago," she said, her voice flat and emotionless, the tone of someone reciting facts that had lost their power to hurt through sheer repetition. "Daniel Whitehorse. He was a trader, half Shoshone, half white. We met at Fort Laramie. He saw me as a person, not property. We married, had a daughter, Katie." Cole said nothing, just listened. "Harlan wanted to buy me, said I'd make good household help. Daniel refused. 2 weeks later, Daniel's wagon overturned during a river crossing. They said the axle broke, said it was an accident." Her fingers tightened on the coffee cup. "But I saw Harlan's hired man near our camp the night before, and the axle hadn't been broken. It had been cut halfway through." "You couldn't prove it." "I'm Apache. Who would believe me?" She took a sip of coffee. "After Daniel died, Harlan came to our cabin, offered to take care of Katie and me, said we'd have shelter, food, safety." I didn't understand what he meant by take care of until it was too late. Cole's jaw tightened, but he remained still, letting her tell it at her own pace. "The contract he made me sign, I couldn't read all the words. English was still hard for me then. He said it was for household work, cooking and cleaning, until Daniel's debts were paid. But the debt kept growing. Extra charges for food, for shelter, for Katie's milk. I could never pay it down." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "And the work wasn't just cooking and cleaning." The implication hung in the air between them, dark and heavy. "When I wouldn't stop crying about Daniel, Harlan locked me in the cellar. 3 days. Katie was still nursing. By the time he let me out, my milk was gone and she was too weak. She died that night in my arms, and I couldn't even scream because he'd warned me that crying was forbidden." A single tear tracked down her face, but she didn't wipe it away. "I buried her myself in the dark, because he wouldn't waste money on a coffin for an Indian baby." Cole set his coffee cup down carefully, fighting the rage that threatened to overwhelm him. Not at her, never, at her, but at the man who'd done this, who'd broken another human being so systematically and felt nothing. "I'm sorry," he said, knowing the words were inadequate, but having nothing better to offer. "Everyone's sorry," she finished her coffee, "but sorry doesn't bring her back." "No, it doesn't." They stood in silence again. Outside, the sun finally broke the horizon, spilling golden light across the snow-covered fields. A new day. Whether better or worse than the last remained to be seen. "What happens now?" Nayland asked. "Now you stay here. You're safe. You're free. Until Harlan comes back. Then I'll deal with Harlan." She studied him with those penetrating eyes. "You would fight him for me? A stranger? An Apache?" "I'd fight him for anyone who needed it."
"But yes, for you specifically." He met her gaze steadily. "You're not a stranger anymore, and I don't give a damn what blood runs in your veins. You're a person who's been hurt, and I have the power to help. So I will." Something shifted in her expression. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of belief. The moment broke when Mateo knocked on the doorframe. "Boss, we've got fence work waiting if you're ready." Cole nodded and grabbed his coat. At the doorway he paused, looked back at Nayland. "You're welcome to come outside if you want. Fresh air. See the horses. Whatever you like. This is your home now, too." After he left, Elena bustled in with breakfast fixings. "Don't mind him, Mija. Cole's not much for pretty words, but his heart's in the right place. Always has been." "He loved his wife very much," Nayland said quietly. "Sarah, yes. Her death near about killed him too." Elena cracked eggs into a bowl. "But he's still here, still breathing." And maybe that's what you both need. Someone who understands that kind of loss.
3 hours later, Nayland appeared in the yard. Cole was working on a section of fence that had come down in the last storm, Mateo beside him setting new posts. He saw her from the corner of his eye, hovering near the barn door, ready to retreat at any sign of threat. He didn't acknowledge her directly, just kept working, giving her space to approach on her own terms. She drifted closer, watched him work. After 10 minutes, when he reached for the hammer, she picked it up and handed it to him. Their fingers brushed. She flinched, but didn't pull away. "Thank you," he said. She nodded, stayed. And when he needed the next tool, she anticipated it, passing him what he needed before he asked. A silent partnership, wordless communication that felt surprisingly natural. When they broke for lunch, Nayland followed them to the house, ate with them instead of alone in her room,
Said nothing, but was present, and that was progress.
That afternoon, Cole found her in the barn, standing near one of the horses, a gentle mare named Sadie. She had her hand extended, but not quite touching, wanting to connect but afraid. "She's friendly," Cole said from the doorway. "Won't bite." Nayland's hand dropped. "I used to have a horse. Before Daniel died. After, Harlan sold it." "You know how to ride?" "My father taught me, long ago." Cole approached slowly, stroked Sadie's neck. "Anytime you want to ride her, she's yours. All the horses are available. Property's yours to roam." "Why are you being kind to me?" The question stopped him. He thought about it, really thought, trying to find words for something he barely understood himself. 4 years ago I watched my wife die and couldn't do anything to stop it. Watched my son die 3 hours later.
I held him in my hands, this tiny thing that never had a chance, and I begged God or fate or whoever was listening to let me trade places with him, take me instead. But nobody was listening. He paused. "When I found you in those trees, tied up and bleeding, I had a choice. I could ride past like everyone else probably did, or I could do something. I could help. And for the first time in 4 years, I felt like my life had purpose again." Nayland was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly he almost missed it. "Thank you." 2 words, but they held weight. The next day, Cole taught her to shoot. He set up targets in the far field, tin cans on fence posts, and showed her how to hold the Winchester rifle, how to sight down the barrel, how to breathe and squeeze rather than pull. "Why?" she asked when he first handed her the weapon. "Because if Cobb comes back, you need to be able to protect yourself.
I won't always be close enough to help."
Her hands trembled as she lifted the rifle. He expected her to struggle with the weight, with the kick, with the noise, but when she fired her first shot, the tin can exploded. Second shot, another can down, third, fourth, fifth, all hits. Cole stared. "You've done this before." "My father was Apache. We learned to hunt young." She lowered the rifle, and for the first time he saw a hint of a smile. "You thought because I'm a woman I couldn't shoot?" "I thought because you've been through hell you might not want to touch a weapon." The smile faded. "I've been helpless too long. Never again." They practiced until the sun began to set, until her shoulder was bruised from the rifle's kick, and his voice was hoarse from instruction. 8 out of 10 targets hit, better than most men he knew. As they walked back to the house, Nalin spoke again. "If I kill Harlan Cobb, would that be murder?" Cole stopped walking, looked at her. "Legally? Yes." "And if he tries to take me and I shoot him?"
"Then it's self-defense." She nodded slowly, processing. "I won't go back. I'll die first. But if I have to choose between dying and killing, I'll choose killing. Let's hope it doesn't come to that." Hope. She tasted the word like something foreign. "I used to hope. It only made things worse." That night they sat by the fire again, a routine forming. Cole in his chair, Nalin on the floor with her back to the wall, Elena knitting in the corner. The silence was comfortable now, each person lost in their own thoughts but somehow connected. "Tell me about your wife," Nalin said suddenly. Cole's first instinct was to deflect, to keep that pain private. But she'd shared her story. Fair was fair. "Sarah was the daughter of the pastor in Sheridan. I met her at a church social. She had this laugh that could light up a whole room. Kindest person I ever knew." He stared into the flames. "We had 3 good years before she got pregnant. She was so happy. Talked to the baby every night before bed. Sang to him. We were going to name him Michael." "What happened?" "Labor started too early. Baby was breech. Midwife couldn't turn him. Sarah pushed for 18 hours, and finally he came, but the damage was too much. She bled out while we were trying to save the baby. Michael lived 3 hours, just long enough for me to hold him and tell him about his mother. Then he stopped breathing, and I couldn't get him started again." Elena's knitting needles had stopped. She was crying silently in the corner. Nalin's eyes were wet too. "I buried them together," Cole continued, "Sarah holding Michael. Figured if they couldn't live together, at least they could rest together." His voice cracked. "The house was too quiet after. I couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand the silence where her laughter used to be. So I just worked until I was too exhausted to think. 4 years of that. Until 3 days ago when I found you." Nalin rose from her spot on the floor. Cole tensed, unsure what was happening. She crossed the space between them and did something that shocked him. She wrapped her arms around him, awkward and hesitant, her head against his shoulder. He froze, didn't know what to do with his hands. Finally, carefully, he returned the embrace, one arm around her shoulders, light enough that she could pull away if she wanted. She didn't pull away. They stayed like that for a long minute, 2 broken people offering each other the only comfort they could. The wordless acknowledgement that grief was real, that loss mattered, that pain deserved to be witnessed. When she finally stepped back, her face was wet with tears. His was too. "I'm tired of being strong," she whispered. "Then don't be. Not tonight. Tonight you can just be tired." She sank back to the floor, and this time when she cried, she didn't try to hide it or muffle the sound. She cried for Katie and Daniel and 3 years of horror. She cried for the girl she'd been before Harlan Cobb broke her. She cried for all the might-have-beens that would never be. And Cole and Elena just sat with her, bearing witness, letting her grief have space to breathe. Sunday came, and with it, church. "You don't have to go if you're not ready," Cole told Nalin at breakfast. "I want to." Her chin lifted in that stubborn way he was learning meant she'd made up her mind. "I won't hide, won't give them the satisfaction." So they rode into Sheridan together, Cole and Nalin in the wagon, Mateo and Elena on horseback behind. The town was small, 2 main streets lined with shops and houses, the church at the north end, with its white painted steeple reaching toward God. People stared as they pulled up. Conversations stopped. A woman clutched her daughter close, as if Naylin might contaminate her with proximity. Cole helped Naylin down from the wagon, offered his arm, and she took it. They walked toward the church entrance and found their way blocked. Mrs. Margaret Sutton stood in the doorway, all 5 feet of righteous indignation in a purple dress and matching hat. Behind her, 3 other women from the Ladies' Society, faces set in identical expressions of disapproval. "Mr. Brennan," Mrs. Sutton's voice could have frozen water in July. "I'm afraid we cannot allow that creature into the house of God." Cole's arm tensed under Naylin's hand, but his voice remained calm. "This creature has a name, Naylin, and she has as much right to worship as anyone here. She's a savage, an Apache. Her people murdered good Christian folk not 6 months ago." Her people? She's one person, not responsible for the actions of others any more than you're responsible for every white person who ever did wrong. Mrs. Sutton's face flushed red. "I will not stand here and be lectured by a man who harbors an Indian whore under his roof." The words hung in the air like poison. Naylin's fingers dug into Cole's arm. He could feel her trembling, not with fear but with rage. Before he could respond, a voice cut through the tension. "Mrs. Sutton!" Father Thomas Murphy appeared in the church doorway behind the women. He was an old man, nearly 60, with kind eyes and the quiet authority that came from decades of service. "Christ welcomed tax collectors and prostitutes to his table. I think we can manage to welcome a woman who's done nothing wrong except survive. Father, you can't seriously mean to allow her inside." "I seriously do. All are welcome in this church. All means all. Now please, step aside." Mrs. Sutton looked like she'd bitten into a lemon, but she moved. The other women followed, whispering furiously among themselves. Father Murphy smiled at Naylin. "Welcome, my child. Please, come in." They sat in the back pew. Half the congregation turned to stare. Some whispered. A few families got up and left, making their disapproval clear. But Father Murphy began his sermon as if nothing was amiss, speaking about compassion and judgment and loving thy neighbor. Cole felt Naylin relax incrementally as the service continued. No one attacked her. No one drove her out. She was allowed to simply exist in this space, to be present without being punished for it. It was such a small thing, such a basic human dignity, and it meant everything. After the service, they lingered outside while the congregation filtered past. Most ignored them, a few nodded politely. And then Sheriff Wade approached, his hat in his hands, his expression apologetic. "Mr. Brennan, Miss, I have something for you." He held out an official-looking document from Judge Cornelius Hart. "He's presiding over Sheridan County this month." Cole took the paper, read it, and felt his blood run cold. "What is it?" Naylin asked. He read aloud. "By order of Judge Hart, the individual known as Narlin, currently residing at the Brennan Ranch, is hereby ordered to return to the household of Harlan Cobb within 7 days to fulfill the terms of her legal contract, or provide proof that said contract has been legally dissolved. Failure to comply will result in arrest for both Narlin and Cole Brennan on charges of theft and harboring stolen property." The world seemed to tilt. Narlin's face went white. 7 days? "There's one other option," Sheriff Wade said quietly. "If she marries, she becomes the legal property of her husband and the contract transfers to him. He could then choose to free her from it." Cole looked at the sheriff, at Narlin, at the paper in his hands. "That's it then," he said. "We'll get married." Narlin's eyes went wide. "You don't have to do this. I'll leave. Go somewhere Harlan can't find me." "He'll find you. Men like him always do." "But if you're my wife, legally, he can't touch you without going through me first." "This is marriage we're talking about. A lifetime commitment." Cole met her eyes. "It's marriage on paper. To protect you, nothing more. I won't expect anything from you except that you stay safe. No obligations, no demands, just legal protection." "Why would you do this for me?" "Because when Sarah died, I couldn't save her. But I can save you. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. Tears spilled down Nayland's cheeks. I don't understand you. You don't have to. You just have to trust me. Can you do that? She looked at him for a long time. Then, voice shaking, yes. Sheriff Wade cleared his throat. I'll let the judge know. He'll want to verify the marriage is legitimate. Father Murphy can perform the ceremony. Do it soon. You've only got 7 days. That night, they made plans. Father Murphy agreed to marry them in 3 days, giving them time to prepare.
Elena fussed over what Nayland would wear, finally settling on a simple white dress that had belonged to Sarah. Cole tried not to think about the symbolism of that. Mateo pulled him aside. Boss, you sure about this? Marriage isn't something to take lightly. It's just paperwork, protection. You keep telling yourself that, but I saw how you look at her, and how she looks at you. This might start as paperwork, but it won't stay that way. Cole wanted to argue but couldn't find the words, because maybe Mateo was right. Maybe somewhere in the last 5 days, this had become about more than just helping a stranger. Maybe it had become personal. 2 days before the wedding, the barn caught fire. Cole woke to Mateo pounding on his door at midnight. Boss, barn's burning! He grabbed his boots and ran. Flames engulfed the south corner of the structure, spreading fast. Inside, horses screamed. Cole and Mateo ran in, throwing open stall doors, driving the terrified animals out into the night. Smoke choked them, heat seared their skin. They got 7 horses out before the roof started to collapse. Out! Cole shouted. Now! They barely made it clear before the south wall came down in an explosion of sparks and burning timber. It took until dawn to put out the fire using bucket brigades from the well. 3 horses dead, trapped in their stalls, half the barn destroyed, and on the remaining wall, painted in crude letters 3 feet high, Indian Lover. Nayland stood in the yard, staring at the message, her face expressionless. This is my fault. I bring this on you. No. Cole's voice was rough from smoke. Harlan Cobb brings this, not you, never you. But she was already walking away, toward the house. He found her 20 minutes later in the bedroom, packing her few belongings into a cloth sack. What are you doing? Leaving, before they burn your house next. Before they hurt you or Mateo or Elena. No. Cole, this has to stop. I'm not worth this. He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed her shoulders, made her look at him. You are worth this. You're worth fighting for, worth protecting, and I'll be damned if I let Harlan Cobb win by making you run again. But the barn, the horses, your reputation in town, everything you're losing because of me. How can you say it's worth it? Because 4 years ago I lost everything that mattered, and spent every day since then just existing, going through motions, waiting to die. His grip on her shoulders gentled. But these last 5 days, protecting you, fighting for you, I felt alive again. You gave me that. You gave me purpose. So yes, it's worth it. You're worth it. She stared at him with those dark eyes swimming in tears. I don't know how to let someone care about me. Don't know if I remember how. Then we'll learn together. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither was ready to name. Cole became aware of how close they were standing, how his hands were still on her shoulders, how her lips were parted and her breathing had quickened. He stepped back. Too soon, too fast. She'd been through enough without him complicating things with feelings she might not share. The wedding's still on, he said. Day after tomorrow. Unless you don't want to. I want to. She wiped her eyes. I'm just afraid. Of what? That I'll start to hope again, and hope has only ever hurt me. He had no answer for that, so he just nodded and left her alone. Outside, Mateo was examining the barn's remains. Fire wasn't an accident. Someone poured kerosene along the base, lit it deliberately. Virgil, Cole said. Probably. We should report it to the sheriff. Sheriff's in Cobb's pocket. Won't do any good. Then what? Cole looked at the burned barn, at the hateful message, at his home that had become a battleground. Then we get married and we wait. Cobb's next move will come soon enough, and when it does, we'll be ready." 2 days later, they stood in front of Father Murphy in the small church, almost empty except for Matteo, Elena, and Sam as witnesses. Naylin wore Sarah's white dress. Cole wore his only suit, the same one he'd worn to bury his wife and son. The ceremony was brief. Father Murphy spoke the traditional words. Cole repeated his vows, voice steady. Naylin repeated hers, voice shaking. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Cole looked at Naylin. She looked at him. Neither moved. Finally, he leaned in and pressed his lips to hers, gentle and brief, more promise than passion. When he pulled back, her eyes were wet. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. Not my scars, not my past, just me." He took her hand. "Come on, Missy Brennan. Let's go home." As they left the church, Cole saw Harlan Cobb standing across the street, watching. Their eyes met. Harlan smiled, slow and cold, then turned and walked away. The message was clear. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But as they rode back to the ranch, Cole felt something shift. For the first time in days, Naylin leaned against him in the wagon, not from exhaustion but from choice. Her hand found his, their fingers laced together. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now we see what comes next. Together." The blizzard hit 2 days after the wedding. Cole had seen it coming, that particular quality of light that meant heavy snow and killing wind. He'd been at the ranch house when the first flakes began to fall, thick and fast, and knew immediately he needed to check on Naylin. She was at her old cabin, gathering the last of her belongings to move permanently to his place. He saddled his horse and rode hard through the building storm. By the time he reached the small structure tucked against the hillside, visibility had dropped to almost nothing. Wind screamed across the prairie, driving snow horizontal. Naylin was trying to secure the barn door when he arrived, fighting against the gale. Together, they managed to get her few animals inside, then ran for the cabin as the full force of the storm hit. Inside, she built up the fire while Cole caught his breath. The walls shook with each gust. Through the single window, the world was nothing but white. "You can't ride home in this," Naylin said. It wasn't a question. "No, storm will last 2, maybe 3 days. I'll wait it out. There's only one room. I'll sleep by the fire." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. The first day passed slowly. They moved around each other carefully in the small space, maintaining polite distance. Cole repaired her broken furniture while she mended clothing. They spoke little, but the silences were comfortable. The second day, the storm intensified. They were truly trapped now, surrounded by drifts that had buried the windows. The world had shrunk to this one room, this firelight, this forced intimacy. That night, Naylin woke, screaming. Cole was beside her before he fully woke, instinct overriding thought. She was sitting up in bed, arms wrapped around herself, shaking violently. Not from cold, from terror. "It's all right," he said quietly. "You're safe. It's just a dream." It wasn't a dream. Her voice was raw. It was a memory. "Tell me." And she did. Everything. The beatings, the starvation, the cellar, Katie's death. The words poured out of her in the darkness, while the storm raged outside, and Cole just listened, his heart breaking with every revelation. When her words finally ran out, he shared his own grief. Sarah's death, Michael's brief life, the crushing weight of surviving when the people you loved didn't, the guilt, the anger, the hollow years after. "I learned young that loss changes you," Cole said, "but it doesn't have to destroy you." "Does it get easier?" "It gets different. You make room for it, learn to carry it." They talked until dawn, the storm still raging outside. In the darkness and isolation, defenses fell away. They were just two people who'd known unbearable loss, finding comfort in shared understanding. When morning light finally seeped through gaps in the shutters, something fundamental had shifted between them. Not love yet, but the foundation of it.
trust, hard-won and terribly fragile, but real. Nalin reached out and took his hand. "Thank you for staying. Always." On the third day, the storm broke. They dug themselves out, working together in comfortable partnership. When they finally rowed back to Cole's ranch, they rowed as something more than strangers playing at marriage. They rowed as partners. And maybe, just maybe, as something even deeper than that. The foundation had been laid.
Now they just had to see what could be built upon it. The wedding night air tasted of ash. Cole stood on the porch of his ranch house, watching the last embers of the barn glow orange against the darkness. A week married now, and already the world was closing in. The burned timber skeleton cast twisted shadows across snow that had been pristine white days ago, and was now trampled mud and soot. Behind him, through the window, he could see Nalin moving in the kitchen. His wife. The word still felt strange in his mouth, like clothing that didn't quite fit. A marriage of protection, he told himself. Legal paperwork to keep her safe, nothing more. But standing here in the cold, watching her silhouette through lamplight, Cole knew he'd been lying to himself from the start. Mateo appeared from the direction of what remained of the barn, his face grim in the moonlight. "Found something you need to see, boss." They walked to the burned structure together, boots crunching through ice. Mateo led him to the north corner, least damaged by the fire, and pointed to the ground. Hoofprints, partially obscured by ash but still visible. And there, pressed into half-frozen mud, a distinctive horseshoe mark. "That's Virgil Cobb's horse," Mateo said quietly. "I'd recognize that print anywhere. Front left shoe has that chip from when he threw it last month." Cole knelt, touched the print with his fingers. He was here, probably with others, set the fire and rode off. "We could tell the sheriff." "Sheriff's bought and paid for. Won't do us any good." Cole stood, brushing ash from his hands. "How many horses you count?" "3, maybe 4. Hard to tell with all the traffic from fighting the fire." "They'll come back, next time with more men." "Then we need more guns." Cole looked at his foreman, this man who'd stood by him through Sarah's death and 4 years of grief, and now this. "I can't ask you to fight my battles, Mateo." "You're not asking, I'm offering." "Elena, too. This is our home, same as yours. And that girl in there, she deserves better than what Cobb's given her. We'll stand." They clasped hands, a wordless agreement. Then Mateo headed to the bunkhouse, and Cole returned to the house, to the warmth, to the woman who'd turned his world upside down in less than 2 weeks. Nalin stood at the sink washing dishes, her movements mechanical and precise. She'd taken off the white wedding dress and changed into one of Elena's everyday dresses, dark brown cotton that made her look even smaller than she was. Her hair was tied back with a strip of cloth, exposing the healing wounds on her neck where the collar had been. "You should be resting," Cole said. She didn't turn around. "I can't sleep." "Neither can I." "Because of the fire?" "Because of a lot of things." She set down the plate she'd been washing, finally faced him. "This is my fault. All of it. The barn, the horses, the danger you're in. I should leave before it gets worse." "We've had this conversation. And I'm still right. Harlan won't stop. He'll burn everything you have just to get to me." Cole crossed the kitchen, stood on the other side of the table from her, close enough to see the exhaustion in her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly. "Then let him come. I'm not afraid of Harlan Cobb." "You should be. He's killed before, and he'll kill again." "So have I." That stopped her. She blinked, processing. "In the war. And after. There was a gang of cattle thieves 5 years back. Killed 2 of my ranch hands. Sheriff did nothing, so I tracked them myself. Found them holed up in an abandoned line shack 20 miles north. They didn't come peacefully." He paused. "I'm not a violent man, Nalin, but I'm not a passive one either. I protect what's mine." "I'm not yours. You're my wife. On paper. Paper makes it legal, but the truth?" He held her gaze. "The truth is, I'd protect you even without the paper. I'd fight for you. Die for you if it came to that. Not because you're mine, because you matter."
Her eyes filled with tears, but none fell. I don't know how to accept kindness without waiting for the cost to come due. There's no cost. This is what people do when they care about each other. Do you care about me? The question hung between them, honest and vulnerable and terrifying. Cole could deflect, could make it about duty or honor or simple human decency. But she'd been lied to enough, deserved better than more lies. Yes, he said simply, I care about you. She made a sound, half sob, half laugh. We barely know each other. I know you're strong. I know you've survived things that would break most people. I know you loved your daughter enough to keep living even after she died. I know you wake up every night at 3 a.m. because I hear you walking the halls. I know you hate coffee but drink it anyway because it gives you something to do with your hands. I know you. He took a breath. And what I know, I care about. Narlin's tears finally spilled over. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking, and Cole did what he'd wanted to do for days. He crossed to her side of the table and wrapped his arms around her, held her while she cried, let her soak his shirt with tears that came from somewhere deep and damaged. She clung to him like a drowning person to a lifeline, her fingers twisted in his shirt, her face pressed against his chest. And Cole just held on, one hand on her back, one in her hair, murmuring wordless sounds of comfort. I'm so tired, she whispered against him, so tired of being afraid, of running, of surviving. Then stop, stay, let me help carry the weight. She pulled back enough to look up at him, her face wet and raw, and more beautiful than anything he'd seen in 4 years. What if I hurt you? What if caring about me destroys everything you have? Then at least I'll have lived again before the end.
That's worth something. They stood there, wrapped in each other, the kitchen warm and quiet around them. And Cole felt something shift in his chest, some locked door opening after years of being sealed. Not forgetting Sarah, never that, but making room alongside the grief for something new, something that felt dangerously like hope. Narlin's hand came up, touched his face, her palm against his jaw. I don't know how to do this, how to be someone's wife, how to let someone close. Neither do I. Been 4 years since I had a wife, forgotten most of the rules. Were there rules? Probably. Sarah was better at them than me. Tell me about her. Really tell me. So he did. They sat at the kitchen table, coffee cooling between them, and Cole talked about Sarah in ways he hadn't been able to before. Not just the perfect memories he'd polished smooth with grief, but the real woman. How she'd burned dinner twice a week because she got distracted reading. How she'd hated morning but loved midnight. How she'd snored softly and denied it vehemently. How she'd wanted 6 children and a white picket fence and a life that had been stolen before it properly began. I loved her, he said. Still do, always will. But she's gone, and I'm still here, and I'm starting to think maybe that's okay. Maybe I can honor her memory and still live. Naylin's fingers traced the rim of her coffee cup. Katie would have been 10 months old now. She'd be crawling, maybe trying to walk, learning to laugh. Her voice caught. I'll never hear her laugh. No, but you heard it once, and that's more than some people ever get. Is it enough? I don't know. Is anything ever enough when you've lost a child? They sat in silence, 2 people bound by shared grief, understanding each other in ways that had nothing to do with time or circumstance. The clock on the mantel ticked toward midnight. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Finally, Naylin stood. I should try to sleep, you too. I'll be down here, on the sofa. She paused halfway to the bedroom door. You don't have to do that, we're married now. On paper, remember? I made you a promise. No obligations. And if I don't want that promise anymore? Cole's heart stuttered. Naylin, I'm not asking for what you think I'm asking. I don't want to be alone tonight. Would you stay in the room? Not in the bed, just near, so I know someone's there. Every protective instinct screamed at him to refuse, to maintain the distance that kept this safe and manageable. But the look in her eyes,
The vulnerability and trust it took to ask for even this small thing undid him. "Yes," he said, "I'll stay." The bedroom felt smaller at night. Cole made a pallet on the floor with extra blankets, while Naylin changed behind a screen in the corner. When she emerged in her nightgown, hair loose around her shoulders, he thought she looked like something from a dream. Beautiful and ethereal and so far beyond his reach it hurt. She climbed into bed, pulled the covers to her chin. He settled onto the floor pallet, uncomfortable but determined. They lay in darkness, listening to each other breathe. "Cole?" "Yes?" "Thank you for staying." "Always." Silence stretched. He was drifting toward sleep when her hand appeared over the edge of the bed, reaching down toward him. Without thinking, he reached up and took it. Her fingers laced through his, holding tight. They fell asleep like that, connected by touch, two broken people finding comfort in the simple fact of not being alone. Morning came too soon and too violent. Cole woke to the sound of hoofbeats, multiple horses moving fast. He was on his feet and grabbing his gun before his eyes fully opened. Naylin sat up in bed, instantly awake, instantly afraid. "Stay here," he ordered, moving to the window. Outside, a single rider approached. Not multiple horses, after all, just one, but moving with urgent purpose. As the rider drew closer, Cole recognized the official seal on his coat. Federal Marshal. This was bad. This was very bad. He went to meet the man on the porch, Mateo emerging from the bunkhouse with his rifle. The marshal was a hard-faced man in his 50s, trail-worn and official-looking. He dismounted without greeting. "Cole Brennan?" "That's me. I'm Marshal Thomas Grant. I'm here about the Apache woman you're harboring." "My wife, you mean? Naylin Brennan?" The marshal pulled a document from his coat. According to federal records, the woman known as Naylin is an escaped Apache prisoner of war. She was being held under custody of Harlan Cobb as part of a civilian conservation program. She has no legal right to remain outside reservation lands. Cole's blood ran cold. "She's not a prisoner. She's my wife. Married 3 days ago by Father Murphy. Legal and binding. Marriage between a white man and an Indian woman requires special territorial permit." "Do you have such a permit?" No. We didn't know we needed one." The marshal's expression didn't change. "Then the marriage is invalid under territorial law. She needs to come with me. She'll be transported to the Apache reservation in Arizona, where she belongs." "She belongs here. The law says otherwise. Now bring her out or I'll come in and get her." Cole's hand moved to his gun. Mateo raised his rifle. The marshal didn't flinch. "You really want to draw on a federal officer, Brennan? That's 20 years hard labor, maybe hanging. You really want to try taking a man's wife? That's a good way to get shot." They stood frozen, 3 men on the edge of violence, the morning sun climbing higher and making their shadows long across the snow. Then the door opened behind Cole. Naylin stepped onto the porch, still in her nightgown with a coat thrown over it, but carrying Cole's Winchester rifle. She worked the lever action, chambering around, the metallic sound sharp in the cold air. "I won't go back," she said, her voice steady and strong. "You'll have to kill me first." The marshal's eyes widened slightly. "Mom, put down the weapon." "No. I have the authority of the federal government behind me. I have the authority of a woman who's been owned and broken and sold too many times. I won't be owned again. Not by Harlan Cobb, not by the government, not by anyone." She raised the rifle, sighted down the barrel at the marshal's chest. "Leave. Now." "Naylin," Cole said quietly, moving beside her. "Let me handle this." "No. This is my fight. Our fight. I stand with you or I don't stand at all." Something passed between them, some understanding that went beyond words. Cole positioned himself beside his wife, his own gun drawn, and Mateo flanked them from the other side. 3 against 1. But one with the weight of federal law behind him. The marshal looked at each of them in turn, calculating odds. "This isn't over. I'll be back with army troops, 20 men, maybe more, and when I do, you'll all hang for this." "Then come back," Cole said. "We'll be here." The marshal mounted his horse, face red with anger and humiliation. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Brennan." "Won't be my first. Probably won't be my last." When the marshal was gone, disappeared over the southern ridge, Naylin lowered the rifle. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline wearing off. Cole gently took the weapon from her. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen," he said. "Probably both." She looked at him, and despite everything, she smiled. A real smile, the first he'd seen from her. "But we stood together. That's something."
"Naylin, you understand what this means. The army will come. 20 men with orders to take you and arrest me. We can't fight the federal government."
"Then what do? We prepare, we fortify, and we hope like hell we can find a legal solution before they come back." He touched her face, couldn't help himself. "I won't let them take you. I made a promise." "Promises can be broken." "Not mine." They stood on the porch, morning light spilling golden across ruined barn and untouched snow, and Cole knew they'd crossed a line. No going back now. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. That afternoon, Cole rode into Sheridan to see Father Murphy and get legal advice. He left Mateo and Sam at the ranch with orders to shoot anyone who approached without announcing themselves peacefully. Naylin insisted on staying armed. She spent the hours he was gone practicing with the Winchester, setting up targets in the field, improving her already impressive accuracy.
Elena watched from the porch, worry etched on her face.
"You shoot like a woman preparing for war," Elena said when Naylin came in for water. "I am. This could end badly, Mika. Very badly." "It could, but I won't go back in chains. I'll die free first." When Cole returned at dusk, his expression was grim. He gathered everyone in the main room, the fire crackling, shadows dancing on the walls. "Father Murphy is trying to expedite the marriage permit with the territorial office. Could take weeks. We don't have weeks." He paused. "Marshall will be back in 3, maybe 4 days with troops. When they come, they'll surround the house and demand surrender." "How many men can we count on?" Mateo asked. "Us. Maybe 2 neighbors who owe me favors, but I wouldn't bet on them when federal troops show up. We're looking at 4 guns against 20. Sam spoke up, his Irish accent thick. "4 guns is enough if we're smart about it. Fortify the house. Clear sight lines.
"Make them come to us."
"They'll burn us out like they burned the barn," Naylin said quietly. "Maybe, but we make it cost them, make it hurt." Cole looked at each of them. "Anyone who wants to leave, no judgment. This is my fight. You don't have to die for it." "Respectfully, boss," Mateo said. "Shut up. We're staying." Elena nodded. Sam grinned. "Haven't had a good fight in years. Keeps a man young." That night, they prepared. Mateo and Sam moved ammunition and food into the house, enough for a week-long siege. They boarded lower windows, created firing positions on the second floor. Cole checked and rechecked weapons, cleaned and oiled every gun they owned. Naylin found him in the barn near midnight, working by lamplight. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Can you?" "No." She sat on a hay bale watching him work. "Teach me more. Not just shooting, fighting, in case they get close." Cole set down the rifle he'd been cleaning. "Hand to hand? Whatever it takes to survive."
So he taught her how to use a knife in close quarters, how to go for eyes and throat and groin, the vulnerable places, how to use her smaller size as an advantage, getting under a larger opponent's guard, how to kill quickly and without hesitation. She was a quick study, absorbing everything with fierce concentration. They practiced in the barn, slow motion at first, then faster. She tripped and he caught her. Their faces ended up inches apart, both breathing hard from exertion. The moment hung suspended. Cole could feel her breath on his lips, could see the question in her eyes, could feel his own heart hammering against his ribs. He leaned in, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't pull away. Her eyes closed, her lips parted slightly. "Boss!" Mateo's shout from outside shattered the moment. "Riders coming!" They broke apart, grabbed weapons, ran for the house. On the southern horizon, torchlights flickered in the darkness.
multiple riders, moving toward the ranch.
Cole counted silently. 8? Maybe 9? Too many to be friendly, too few to be the federal troops. "Who is it?" Nayland whispered beside him. He got his answer when they came close enough to recognize. Virgil Cobb at the front, his pretty face twisted in anticipation. Behind him, 8 hired guns, all armed, all looking eager for violence. They stopped 50 yards from the house. Virgil's voice carried across the distance. "Brennan, send out my father's property and maybe we'll let you live." Cole stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. "Go home, Virgil. This doesn't have to get bloody." "Already is bloody. You've got something that belongs to us. We're taking it back." "She's not property. She's my wife." Virgil laughed, an ugly sound. "That fake marriage? Doesn't count. Father's got a federal marshal coming with troops. But we thought we'd handle this ourselves first. Save everyone the trouble. Last warning. Ride away." "Or what? You'll shoot? You're one man, Brennan. We're 9. Math doesn't favor you." Cole levered around into his Winchester. Mateo appeared at the window, rifle visible. Sam at another window. Nayland beside Cole, her own weapon ready. "Looks like 4 to 9 from where I'm standing," Cole said. "Still like your odds?" For a moment Virgil hesitated, then his face hardened. "Fine, the hard way it is. Boys, burn them out." 2 of the hired men lit torches. The night exploded into chaos, and the siege began. The first gunshot shattered the night like breaking glass. Cole dropped behind the porch railing as the bullets splintered wood where his head had been a second before. Return fire erupted from the house windows, Mateo and Sam shooting with the practiced efficiency of men who'd seen combat before. The hired guns scattered, taking cover behind water troughs and fence posts, their horses bolting into the darkness. "Get inside!" Cole shouted at Nayland, but she was already moving, crouched low, rifle in hand. She took position at the window beside Elena, who'd grabbed an old shotgun and looked surprisingly comfortable holding it. Virgil Cobb's voice cut through the gunfire. "Thought you were smarter than this, Brennan. All you had to do was give her up." Cole didn't waste breath answering. He fired 3 quick shots, driving Virgil behind the water trough. The hired guns returned fire, bullets thudding into the house walls, punching through windows. Glass exploded inward. Elena screamed but kept shooting. The firefight settled into a rhythm. Attack and counter. Advance and retreat. Minutes stretched into an hour. Cole's shoulder ached from the rifle's kick. His ears rang from the constant percussion. Gun smoke hung thick in the air, acrid and choking. Then Mateo's rifle clicked empty. He ducked down to reload, fingers fumbling with cartridges in the dark. In that 3-second window, one of Virgil's men made his move. He sprinted from cover toward the house, firing wildly. Mateo rose to meet him, rifle not quite loaded, and the hired gun tackled him through the window in an explosion of remaining glass and splintered frame. They hit the ground hard, rolling, fighting for dominance. The hired gun was bigger, heavier, younger. He got on top, hands around Mateo's throat. Cole moved to help, but another attacker opened fire, pinning him behind the doorframe. Sam's rifle barked. The man choking Mateo jerked, blood blooming on his shoulder, and rolled off. But 2 more rushed in, dragging Mateo out through the broken window before anyone could stop them. "No!" Elena's scream tore the night. Cole watched, helpless, as they hauled his foreman into the yard, into the open where moonlight painted everything silver and black. Virgil appeared from behind the water trough, gun in hand, smiling that pretty boy smile that made Cole want to smash his teeth in. "Cease fire!" Virgil shouted. "Everyone cease fire!" The shooting stopped. Silence rushed in, broken only by harsh breathing and the crackle of a torch one of the men still held. Mateo knelt in the dirt, arms twisted behind him, blood running from his nose. 2 hired guns stood over him, pistols aimed at his head. Virgil walked forward, calm and confident, until he stood 10 feet from the porch. "Here's how this works, Brennan. Send out the Indian whore, or I blow your friend's brains all over your yard." "Don't do it, boss," Mateo shouted. One of the men hit him with a rifle butt. He went down hard. Cole's mind raced.
He couldn't shoot Virgil without them killing Matteo, couldn't rush them, too much open ground, couldn't surrender Naylin, wouldn't even if he could. No good options, no winning plays. Then Naylin was moving. No! Cole grabbed for her, but she was too fast, already out the door, rifle lowered, hands raised. "I'm here! Let him go!" Virgil's smile widened. Well, well. The animal can follow commands after all. She walked down the porch steps, each movement deliberate and slow. Cole's heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct screamed to stop her, but any sudden movement would get her or Matteo killed. He could only watch, rifle raised but useless, as she crossed the distance to where Virgil waited. When she was 5 feet away, Virgil nodded to his men. They threw Matteo forward. He crawled toward the house, gasping. Elena ran out to help him, and for a moment Cole thought it might actually work. Naylin for Matteo, a trade, an ending. Then Virgil raised his pistol and shot Matteo in the shoulder. The crack of the gunshot, Matteo's cry, Elena's scream. It all happened in the space of a heartbeat, and that heartbeat shattered something fundamental in Cole's chest. He was moving before thought, vaulting the porch railing, rifle forgotten, only rage and the primal need to destroy the thing that had caused this pain. He hit Virgil like an avalanche, both of them going down in a tangle of limbs and fury. They rolled in the dirt, trading blows. Virgil was younger, faster. Cole was angrier, stronger. Fists connected with jaw, with ribs, with anything that presented itself. Blood flew, teeth cracked. The world narrowed to just this, just violence, just the animal need to hurt and be hurt. Virgil got on top, hands around Cole's throat. His pretty face was ruined now, nose broken, lips split. "Should have given her up when you had the chance." Cole couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Black spots swam in his vision. He clawed at Virgil's hands, at his face, trying to break the chokehold. His strength was fading. This was it. This was how it ended. Then the pressure released. Virgil jerked backward, his grip loosening, his eyes going wide with shock. He looked down at his chest where a red stain was spreading, blooming like a flower. He turned his head and there was Naylin, Cole's rifle in her hands, smoke still curling from the barrel. "You," Virgil managed, blood bubbling from his lips. "Me," Naylin said. She fired again, point blank, center mass. Virgil's body jumped with the impact, and then he was falling, toppling sideways into the dirt. He twitched once, twice, then lay still, his pretty face staring sightless at the stars. The hired guns froze, shocked into immobility. Then one raised his weapon toward Naylin, and Sam's rifle spoke from the house window. The man dropped. Another turned to run, and Matteo, despite his wounded shoulder, shot him in the back. What followed was chaos. 3 hired guns dead in the yard, 2 more wounded. The remaining 3 threw down their weapons and ran for their horses, disappearing into the night. The whole thing had taken maybe 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. Cole pushed himself to his feet, ears ringing, ribs screaming, and looked at Naylin. She stood over Virgil's body, still holding the rifle, her face empty of all expression. No triumph, no horror, just nothing. "Naylin," he said softly. She didn't respond, didn't move, just stared at the man she'd killed. Cole walked to her, gently took the rifle from her shaking hands. "It's over. You did what you had to do." "I killed him." Her voice was flat, mechanical. "I shot him, and he died, and I felt nothing." "That's shock. It'll hit you later." "What if it doesn't? What if I'm broken so badly that killing feels like nothing?" He turned her to face him, hands on her shoulders. "You're not broken. You're strong. You protected yourself, protected me. That's not broken. That's surviving." Her eyes finally focused on his face. She lifted one hand to touch his cheek, his split lip, the bruises already forming. "He hurt you." "I'm fine. You're bleeding. I've bled before." And then she was crying, huge, racking sobs that shook her entire body. She collapsed against him, and Cole caught her, held her, let her fall apart in his arms, while the dead lay scattered around them, and dawn began to paint the eastern sky pale grey. Elena appeared, her face streaked with tears and soot. "Matteo needs the doctor. The bullet went clean through, but he's losing blood." "Take him inside. I'll ride for Dr. Ashford." Cole looked at Sam, still in the window, rifle ready. "Watch the house. They might come back." "They won't," Sam said grimly. "We killed half their number. Cowards don't rally after that." Cole helped Elena get Matteo inside, then rode for town at a full gallop, leaving Nalin with the old cowhand and the bodies and the terrible silence that followed violence. By the time he returned with the doctor, the sun was up and the full horror of the night was visible in daylight. 5 bodies in the yard, blood soaking into snow, the house pocked with bullet holes, Virgil Cobb's corpse staring at nothing. Doctor Ashford worked on Matteo for an hour, extracting cloth fragments, cleaning the wound, stitching flesh. The foreman bore it stoically, only grunting when the needle went deep. When it was done, he looked grey and weak, but alive. "He'll recover," the doctor said quietly to Cole, "but he needs rest. No work for at least a month." "He'll get it." "And you?" The doctor studied Cole's battered face. "You look like you went 10 rounds with a bear." "Feel like it too." After the doctor left, Cole found Nalin in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. The hands that had pulled the trigger. The hands that had killed. "Talk to me," he said. "What do you want me to say?" "Anything, everything, nothing. Just don't shut me out." She looked up at him with those dark eyes that held too much pain for one person to carry. "I thought killing him would make me feel better, make me feel free, but all I feel is empty." Cole sat beside her, close but not touching. "First time I killed a man, I was 21. Army scout, tracking Comanche raiders. Got in a firefight, shot him through the heart. Went back to camp and threw up for an hour. Couldn't eat for 3 days. He paused. "It doesn't get easier. Shouldn't get easier. The day killing feels normal is the day you've lost something important." "But you did it again, you said so. The cattle thieves." "Because it was necessary. Because not doing it would have meant more innocent people dying. Doesn't mean it didn't cost me something each time." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, and they sat like that while morning light filled the room and the house settled into uneasy quiet. Around noon, riders appeared on the horizon. Cole grabbed his rifle, expecting the worst, but as they drew closer, he recognized Father Murphy at the front, and behind him, a dozen townspeople. Men from Sheridan, some he knew, some he didn't. All armed, all looking grim. "We heard the shooting," Father Murphy said as they dismounted. "Came to help." "It's over," Cole said. "Virgil Cobb and 4 of his men are dead." One of the townsmen, a German blacksmith named Heinrich Bauer, spat on the ground. "Good. The Cobbs have terrorized this county long enough. Where's Harlan?" "Probably at his ranch, planning his next move." "Then we need to prepare," another man said. Cole recognized him as Mr. Chen, the Chinese shopkeeper who'd always treated him fairly. "Harlan won't let his son's death go unanswered. He'll come with everything he has." Father Murphy stepped forward. "Cole, there's something you should know. Judge Hart is in town. He's agreed to see you and Nalin today, about the marriage permit." "Why would he do that?" "Because I asked him, and because after last night, half the town is ready to testify that Harlan Cobb is a monster and you're a hero. Public opinion has shifted." Cole looked at the assembled men, rough workers and shopkeepers and farmers, united in something that looked almost like solidarity. "Why are you all helping?" Mr. Chen spoke up. "Because some of us know what it's like to be treated as less than human, to have our humanity questioned because of how we look or where we came from. What's happening to your wife could happen to any of us. We won't stand for it. Also," Heinrich added, "the Cobbs owe me money from 3 years back, personal grudge." Despite everything, Cole smiled. "Fair enough." They buried the dead that afternoon in a mass grave on the edge of Cole's property. No markers, no prayers, just dirt and stones and the promise that they wouldn't be forgotten, even if no one would miss them. That evening, Cole found Nalin by the creek, watching water flow beneath ice. The sun was setting, painting everything orange and gold. She looked ethereal in that light, like something not quite of this world.
He sat beside her on the frozen bank.
Father Murphy got us an audience with the judge. Tomorrow morning, we can petition for the marriage permit. And if he says no, then we find another way. She picked up a stone, turned it over in her hands. I need to tell you something. His heart clenched. Okay? When you asked me to marry you, I said yes because I was afraid, because I needed protection, because I didn't know what else to do. She threw the stone into the creek. It cracked through ice and disappeared. But now, after last night, after watching you fight for me, after standing beside you, I realize something. What's that? I don't want a marriage on paper anymore. Cole's throat went tight. Naylin, let me finish. She turned to face him. I want a real marriage. With you. Not because I'm afraid, not because I need protection, but because somewhere in the last week, I fell in love with you. The words hung in the cold air between them, impossibly brave and terrifyingly honest. You don't have to say it back, she continued quickly. I know you loved Sarah. I know this is complicated. I just needed you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the judge says, I choose you. I choose this. I choose us. Cole cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away tears. She didn't know she was crying. I loved Sarah with everything I had. Part of me always will. But the heart's not like a well that runs dry. It's more like land. You can plant new crops without destroying what grew before. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you too. Don't know when it happened. Maybe when I saw you in those trees. Maybe when you stood up to that marshal. Maybe it's been growing this whole time, and I was too scared to admit it. He leaned his forehead against hers. I love you, Naylin. Not the idea of you, not the person I'm saving. You, the real you. Strong and broken and brave and terrified, all of it. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate and full of everything words couldn't hold. He kissed her back, pulling her close, pouring 4 years of loneliness and grief and the fragile new hope into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she smiled, really smiled. So this is a real marriage now? Real as it gets. Good. She stood, pulled him to his feet. Then let's go home, our home, together. That night, for the first time, they shared a bed as husband and wife in truth, not just law. What passed between them in the darkness was tender and slow and healing in ways neither had thought possible. And when dawn came, they woke tangled together, something fundamental having shifted in the night. The next morning, they rode into Sheridan to meet Judge Hart. Cole, Naylin, Father Murphy, and a dozen townspeople who'd volunteered to come as witnesses. They assembled at the church because the courthouse was too small. Judge Hart, a severe-looking man in his 60s, sat behind a makeshift bench, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I understand you're petitioning for a territorial marriage permit, he said without preamble. Yes, Your Honor, Cole replied. My wife and I were married by Father Murphy 3 days ago, but we were unaware of the permit requirement. The law is clear on mixed-race marriages. They require special documentation and approval. The judge shuffled papers. However, I've received multiple testimonies from town residents speaking to both your characters, and I've also heard disturbing allegations about Harlan Cobb's treatment of this woman. Everything you've heard is true, Naylin said, her voice steady. Harlan Cobb murdered my husband, enslaved me, and let my daughter die. I have scars to prove it. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Judge Hart studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Based on the evidence presented and the testimonies given, I'm granting the marriage permit. Naylin Brennan, you are legally recognized as the wife of Cole Brennan with all rights and protections therein. Relief flooded through Cole so powerfully his knees went weak. Naylin gripped his hand, tears streaming down her face. However, the judge continued, this doesn't resolve the federal issue. The marshal's claim that Mrs. Brennan is an escaped Apache prisoner remains valid under federal law. I can't protect you from that. Then what do we do? Cole asked. Before the judge could answer, the church doors burst open. Harlan Cobb strode in,
12 armed men behind him, all carrying rifles. The townspeople gasped, scrambled backward. Judge Hart stood, face flushing red. "Mr. Cobb, this is a legal proceeding. You can't just—" "Can't I?" Harlan's voice was ice. His eyes, red-rimmed from crying or rage or both, fixed on Cole and Nalin. "You killed my son."
"My only child. And you think a piece of paper will protect you?" Cole stepped in front of Nalin. "Virgil died attacking my home. It was self-defense." "It was murder, and I'll see you both hang for it." Harlan raised his hand, and his men leveled their rifles at the assembled crowd. "Everyone out, except Brennan and the Indian." Judge Hart tried to protest. "This is illegal. I'll have you arrested." "With what army? I own the sheriff. I own half this town. I own you, Hart. Now get out before I shoot you too." The judge fled, along with Father Murphy and most of the townspeople. A few tried to stay, but Harlan's men forced them out at gunpoint. Within minutes, the church was empty, except for Cole, Nalin, Harlan, and 12 hired guns. They were surrounded, trapped, no way out. This was it, the all-is-lost moment, the place where hope died. Harlan smiled, slow and cruel. "I'm going to kill you slow, Brennan. Make you watch while I break her all over again. Then I'll kill her too. But first she'll know exactly what it means to cross me." Cole calculated distances. 12 guns against 2. No cover, no escape. They might take down 3, maybe 4 before being cut down. Not enough. Nalin's hand found his. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." They prepared to die together. Then gunfire erupted, but not at them, from outside. Shots poured through the church windows, shattering glass, splintering pews. Harlan's men dove for cover, returning fire blindly. In the chaos, Cole grabbed Nalin and pulled her behind the altar. Through the broken windows he saw them, townspeople, dozens of them, armed with rifles, shotguns, hunting weapons. Father Murphy at the front, his face set with righteous fury. Mr. Chen beside him, Heinrich Bauer, Sam and Matteo, despite his wounded shoulder. Even Mrs. Sutton, the woman who'd barred Nalin from church, holding an ancient pistol with shaking hands. The whole town had come. Father Murphy's voice rang out. "Harlan Cobb, you're surrounded. Release them and surrender, or face the consequences." Harlan, crouched behind a pew, looked at his men. Half were already wounded. The other half looked ready to bolt. He'd miscalculated, thought his money and power made him untouchable. But he'd pushed too far, hurt too many people, and finally, the town had had enough. "This isn't over," he screamed. "I'll kill you all." But it was over. His men knew it. One by one, they threw down their weapons and raised their hands. Harlan was alone, surrounded, defeated. And in that moment, Cole understood. This wasn't just about him and Nalin anymore. This was about a community deciding what kind of place they wanted to live in, what kind of people they wanted to be. Justice, real justice, wasn't something handed down from judges and marshals. It was something people chose together. The siege was broken, the battle was won, and against all odds, they were still alive. Harlan Cobb stood alone in the center of the church, his hired guns disarmed and kneeling with their hands behind their heads. Through the shattered windows, the barrels of 30 rifles pointed inward, held by townspeople who'd finally found the courage to stand against tyranny. But Harlan wasn't looking at them. His eyes, wild and bloodshot, fixed on Nalin, where she crouched behind the altar with Cole. In his hand, mostly hidden by his body, he still held a small Derringer pistol, a gambler's weapon, a coward's last resort. "You took everything from me," Harlan said, his voice cracking. "My son, my reputation, everything I built." "You took everything from me first," Nalin replied, rising to her feet despite Cole's attempt to pull her back down. "My husband, my daughter, 3 years of my life. You don't get to play victim now. You're an animal, property. You should have stayed broken." "I was never broken," Just bent. There's a difference.
Harlan's hand twitched toward the hidden gun.
Cole saw it, started to move, but Naylin was faster. She'd kept Cole's pistol tucked in her belt, and now she drew it with the smooth confidence of someone who'd learned that survival sometimes required violence. "Don't," she said simply. For a long moment they stood frozen, a tableau of hate and hurt, and the terrible math of who would shoot first. Outside, Father Murphy shouted for calm, but his voice seemed distant, muffled, as if the whole world had shrunk to just this moment. Harlan's lips curled into something that might have been a smile on a sane man's face. "You won't do it. You're weak. That's why it was so easy to break you. You never broke me. You hurt me. There's a difference." Her hand didn't shake, her aim didn't waver, and I'm not weak anymore. He went for the derringer. She fired. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, echoing off stone walls and wooden pews. Harlan jerked backward, the derringer falling from nerveless fingers, his eyes wide with shock. He looked down at the spreading red stain on his chest, then up at Naylin, and for just a second, something like understanding crossed his face. "You," he whispered, blood bubbling from his lips. "Me," Naylin said, echoing the words she'd spoken to his son. "I'm the last thing you'll ever see. I want you to remember that in whatever hell you're going to." Harlan Cobb, one of the richest and most powerful men in Sheridan County, fell to his knees on the church floor. He swayed there for a moment, mouth working soundlessly, then toppled forward, dead before he hit the ground. The church erupted. Harlan's men tried to stand, but were immediately forced back down by the townspeople who rushed in. Judge Hart appeared, face pale but determined, and declared the shooting justified self-defense. Sheriff Wade, looking relieved to be free of Harlan's influence, arrested the remaining hired guns on charges of assault and attempted murder. Through it all, Naylin stood motionless, the gun still in her hand, staring at the body of the man who'd tortured her for 3 years. Cole approached slowly, gently took the weapon from her shaking fingers. "It's over," he said quietly. "He can't hurt you anymore." "I killed him." Her voice was hollow, distant. "I looked him in the eyes and I killed him and I don't feel anything. What does that make me?" "Human. It makes you human, and alive, and free." She turned to him then, and her face crumpled. The tears came, huge racking sobs that shook her entire body. Cole pulled her close, held her while she cried, while the church filled with people and chaos swirled around them. Father Murphy was saying something about God's justice and mercy. Judge Hart was ordering the bodies removed. Mrs. Sutton, of all people, was crying too, her earlier prejudice apparently washed away by the violence she'd witnessed. But Cole heard none of it. His whole world had narrowed to the woman in his arms, the wife he'd married to save and ended up loving, the survivor who'd finally gotten her justice. They stood like that for a long time, and when Naylin finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. Something had shifted in her face, some burden laid down. She wasn't healed, might never be fully healed, but she was lighter somehow. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me, for fighting for me, for loving me when I didn't think I deserved to be loved." Cole cupped her face in his hands. "You always deserved it. You just needed to believe it yourself." The aftermath took hours to sort through. Judge Hart, acting with an authority that surprised everyone, declared all of Harlan's business dealings under investigation. His estate, worth thousands of dollars, was to be liquidated and distributed to his victims. Sheriff Wade, eager to prove his newfound independence, arrested 12 of Harlan's former associates on various charges, and in the center of it all, Cole and Naylin gave their statements, recounting 3 years of abuse, slavery, and murder. The whole ugly story laid bare in legal language and official records. No more hiding, no more shame. When it was finally done, when the last statement was signed and the last body removed, they walked out of the church into late afternoon sunlight. The town of Sheridan stretched before them, no longer hostile, no longer threatening. Just a town, just people, some good, some bad, most somewhere in between. Mr. Chen approached, hat in his hands. "Mrs. Brennan, I want to apologize. For not helping sooner. For looking the other way when I knew something was wrong." "You helped today," Nayland said quietly. "That's what matters. Still, I'm sorry." Others came forward with similar apologies. Mrs. Sutton, her face red with shame, admitted she'd been wrong to judge. Heinrich Bauer offered free blacksmith services for a year. A dozen small acts of contrition from people who'd let fear and prejudice rule them. Nayland accepted each with grace Cole hadn't known she possessed. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. The beginning of something that might someday become healing. They rode home as the sun set, painting the snow-covered fields in shades of orange and gold. Matteo met them at the ranch, his arm in a sling but his face bright with relief. Elena had prepared a feast, more food than 4 people could possibly eat, her way of celebrating survival. That night, they ate together, the 4 of them, sharing stories and laughter that felt almost normal, almost peaceful. Matteo told jokes that weren't funny but made them laugh anyway. Elena fussed over everyone's plates, making sure they ate enough. Cole felt something in his chest unclench. Some tension he'd been carrying for days, or maybe years. When Matteo and Elena finally retired to the bunkhouse, Cole and Nayland sat by the fire in comfortable silence. The flames crackled and popped. Outside, wind whispered through pine trees. The night was quiet, in a way it hadn't been since all this started. "What happens now?" Nayland asked. "Now we live. Really live." "I don't know how to do that." "Neither do I, but we'll figure it out together." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, and they watched the fire burn low. After a while she spoke again. "Judge Hart said I'm entitled to part of Harlan's estate. Money, land, things I never wanted. What will you do with it?" "Give it away. To other Apache women who are trapped like I was. Buy their freedom. Give them a chance." She paused. "Is that foolish?" "It's the best thing I've ever heard. Blood money feels dirty. I don't want any part of it." "Then you're a better person than most." Cole kissed the top of her head. "Sarah would have liked you." Nayland stiffened slightly. "You still think about her?" "Every day, but not the way I used to. Before, the memories were all pain. Now they're just memories. Good ones mixed with sad ones. She was part of my life and always will be. But she's not all of my life anymore." "Because of me?" "Because of you. Because I learned that grief doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the middle, the hard part you get through to reach something better." She turned to look at him, firelight dancing across her face. "I love you, Cole Brennan, more than I thought I could ever love anyone after Daniel died. I love you too. Not instead of Sarah, not to replace her, just as its own thing, new and different and real." They kissed then, slow and tender, and later made their way to the bedroom they now truly shared. What passed between them that night was healing in ways neither could articulate. The joining of 2 damaged souls finding completeness in each other. Not perfect, never perfect, but whole enough. A week later, Cole took Nayland to the cemetery. They rode through melting snow, spring finally beginning to assert itself over winter's grip. The valley cemetery looked different in the warming weather, brown grass peeking through white. The first brave crocuses pushing up through frozen ground, life asserting itself against death. Cole led her to a grave in the northwest corner. 2 headstones, one large, one small, both weather-worn but well-maintained. Sarah Brennan and Michael Brennan, the dates etched in granite, telling the story of lives too brief. "I wanted you to meet them," Cole said quietly. "Seemed wrong that you didn't know the people who made me who I am." Nayland knelt beside the graves, touched the stones gently. "Your wife, your son. My first family, but not my only family." He knelt beside her. "Sarah, this is Nayland. She's my wife now. I hope that's okay. I hope you understand that loving her doesn't mean I loved you less. It just means my heart had more room than I thought." Tears tracked down his face. Nayland took his hand, squeezed it.
And Michael, Cole continued, voice breaking, you would have been 4 years old now. Maybe you'd have had a little brother or sister to play with. I think about that sometimes, about the life we didn't get to have. He paused, gathering himself. But I'm going to try again. To have a family, to build something good. I hope that makes you happy, wherever you are. They sat in silence for a long while, holding hands, letting grief have its space. Finally, Naylin spoke. There's a place I need to go too. Will you come with me? Of course. They rode east, to the edge of Harlan Cobb's former property, now seized by the territorial government, pending legal resolution. In a forgotten corner, beneath a twisted juniper tree, was a small mound of earth. No marker, no stone, just dirt, and the memory of what it held. This is where I buried Katie, Naylin said, dismounting. Harlan wouldn't pay for a proper burial, so I did it myself in the dark, just me and her and the ground. Cole felt rage flare in his chest, hot and fierce, at the casual cruelty of denying a mother even the dignity of properly mourning her child. But Harlan was dead now, beyond the reach of earthly justice, so Cole swallowed the anger and focused on Naylin. She knelt by the grave, hands flat on the earth. Katie, my sweet girl, I'm sorry it took so long to come back. I was afraid that being here would break me all over again. Her voice caught. But I'm not alone anymore. This is Cole. He's my husband. A good man. The kind of man your father was. I think you'd like him. Cole knelt beside her, placed his hand over hers on the cold ground. Naylin continued, tears streaming freely now. I'm going to give you a proper stone, Mika, with your name and the dates and words about how much I loved you, how much I still love you. And I'm going to plant flowers here, the kind that bloom in spring, so you'll never be alone. She broke down then, huge racking sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. Cole held her while she cried for her daughter, for the life Katie never got to live, for all the might-have-beens that would never be. And watching her grieve, Cole felt his own tears fall, for Michael, for Sarah, for all the lost children and broken hearts and dreams that died too young. They cried together there in the dirt, two parents who'd lost children, sharing pain that no one else could truly understand. When the tears finally subsided, when they were cried out and empty, and somehow lighter for it, Naylin looked at Cole with red-rimmed eyes. I have something to tell you, she said. I've been afraid to say it. Afraid it might not be real, or that saying it out loud would jinx it somehow. What is it? I'm late. My monthly bleeding. It should have come a week ago, but it hasn't. She took a shaking breath. I think I might be carrying your child. The world stopped. Cole's heart stuttered, stopped, started again too fast. Are you sure? Not completely, but I know my body. And I felt this before, with Katie. The tiredness, the way food tastes different, the feeling like something's changing inside me. She searched his face. Are you happy or terrified? Both. God, both. He pulled her close, held her tight. After Michael, I never thought I'd have another chance. Never thought I deserved one. And now? Now I'm terrified we'll lose this baby too. Terrified something will go wrong. But I'm also so grateful. So full of hope I can barely breathe. She pulled back to look at him. Me too. After Katie died, I thought I'd never want another child. The pain of losing her was too much. But now I think maybe this is how we honor the ones we lost. By living, by loving, by being brave enough to try again. We'll get Dr. Ashford to check on you. Make sure everything's okay. Do everything right this time. And if something goes wrong anyway? Cole took her face in his hands. Then we'll survive it together, like we've survived everything else. But I have to believe it won't. I have to believe that after all the darkness, we've earned some light. They rode home in silence, both lost in thoughts of possibility and fear and hope all tangled together. That night, Cole lay awake long after Naylin had fallen asleep. his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach, trying to feel for some sign of the life that might be growing there. Please, he prayed to God, or fate, or whatever forces governed life and death. Please let this one live. Let me be a father. Let her be a mother again. Let us have this.
The weeks that followed were a strange mixture of healing and waiting. Dr. Ashford confirmed the pregnancy, estimated the baby would come in late September or early October. He prescribed rest and good food and freedom from stress, which made Cole laugh because stress had been their constant companion for months. But slowly, gradually, life began to settle into something resembling normal. Matteo recovered fully, his shoulder healing with only a slight stiffness that he claimed made him look distinguished. Elena fussed over Naylin like a mother hen, making sure she ate enough and rested enough and didn't lift anything heavy. The territorial government formally charged Harlan Cobb's estate with multiple counts of murder, slavery, and fraud. His property was seized and sold at auction. Naylin made good on her promise, using her portion to buy freedom for 7 Apache women who were trapped in similar situations. She set up a fund, administered by Father Murphy, to help displaced native families. The town's attitude shifted, not overnight, not completely, but enough that Naylin could walk Main Street without stares and whispers. Mrs. Sutton even invited her to join the Ladies' Society, though Naylin politely declined. Some wounds took longer to heal than others. Cole rebuilt the barn, bigger and better than before. Neighbors helped, a barn raising that turned into a celebration, food and music and laughter, the kind of community gathering that made Sheridan feel like home rather than hostile territory. And through it all, Naylin's belly grew. Slowly at first, then more obviously. By summer, she was showing clearly, her hand constantly resting on the growing curve, as if reassuring herself it was real. One evening in late August, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Naylin's hand was on her stomach, feeling the baby kick. Cole's hand covered hers, marveling at the life moving beneath his palm. "What should we name her?" Naylin asked. "Her? You think it's a girl?" "I know it is. A mother knows." Cole thought about it. "What about Hope? Because that's what she is. Our hope for the future." Naylin smiled. "Hope Brennan. I like it. But what if I'm wrong? What if it's a boy?" "Then Daniel, for your husband, the man who saw your worth when others didn't." She turned to him, tears in her eyes. "You would honor him that way? He was part of making you who you are. He loved you, gave you Katie. He deserves to be remembered." She kissed him then, long and slow and full of love. When she pulled back, she was smiling through tears. "Have I told you lately that you're a good man, Cole Brennan?" "Once or twice." "Well, it bears repeating." They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and gold and purple. The land stretched before them, their land, bought with pain and defended with blood, but theirs now. A place to build a life, a place to raise a child, a place to finally be at peace. "Cole?" "Yes. I'm happy. After everything, after all the horror and pain and loss, I'm actually happy. Is that okay? Am I allowed to be happy?" He pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. "You're not just allowed, you've earned it. We both have. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for it all to fall apart. It won't. We won't let it." "Promise?" "I promise. From now on, we fight for joy instead of just survival. We choose happiness. We choose each other. Every day, we choose each other." She settled against him, his arm around her shoulders, her hand on their unborn child. Above them, stars began to appear in the darkening sky, infinite and eternal and indifferent to human suffering, but beautiful nonetheless. "Tell me the future," Naylin said softly. "Tell me what our life will be like." So Cole did. He painted the picture with words of Hope growing up on the ranch, learning to ride before she could properly walk. Of more children, maybe 3 or 4, filling the house with noise and chaos. Of Naylin teaching them Apache traditions and Cole teaching them ranch work. Of family dinners and Christmas mornings and ordinary days that would be extraordinary because they'd fought so hard to have them. He told her about growing old together, their hands weathered and their hair grey, sitting on this same porch, watching grandchildren play. About a life built on love rather than fear, on choice rather than obligation, on hope rather than despair. And as he spoke, Naylin closed her eyes and let herself believe. Let herself hope. Let herself imagine a future that wasn't stolen or broken or marred by violence. Just a future, simple and beautiful, and theirs. The baby kicked again, strong and insistent, and they both laughed.
A reminder that life continued, that after winter came spring, that frozen ground could bloom, that they'd survived, and more than survived, they'd won. 1 year later, spring 1887, the ranch had transformed. Where burned timber had stood, a new barn rose red and proud, twice the size of the old one. Horses grazed in pastures that had been empty through the long winter. Fences stood straight and strong, recently painted white. The house itself bore new additions, a nursery on the east side where morning sun streamed through clean windows, and a covered porch that wrapped around two sides where rocking chairs waited for quiet evenings. Cole stood in the doorway of that nursery, watching his wife nurse their daughter. Naylin sat in the rocking chair they'd brought from the main room, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, the baby latched contentedly at her breast. Morning light painted them both gold, like something from a painting, like something too beautiful to be real. But it was real, all of it. After everything they'd survived, after all the darkness and blood and fear, they'd arrived here, at peace, at home, at last. The baby made a small sound, somewhere between contentment and complaint, and Naylin smiled down at her. "Hungry this morning, aren't you, little one?" "She's always hungry," Cole said from the doorway. "Gets that from her mother." Naylin looked up, caught his eye, and they both grinned. A private joke, one of dozens they'd accumulated over the past year. The small intimacies that came from truly knowing someone, from building a life together day by day. The baby, Hope Sarah Brennan, was 6 months old. Born on a cool October evening, with Dr. Ashford in attendance and Elena playing midwife, she'd come into the world screaming with fury and life. Cole had held her for the first time with shaking hands, this tiny, perfect thing, and wept with relief and joy, and the overwhelming terror of being responsible for something so precious. She looked like her mother. Dark hair, dark eyes, skin a beautiful shade between Naylin's copper brown and Cole's sun-weathered tan. A perfect blend of both their worlds, a bridge between cultures in the form of a tiny human who didn't know yet that the world might judge her for being different. "Mateo's finishing the new corral," Cole said. "Says we'll be ready for those horses from Montana by next week." "The breeding program?" "The one you suggested. Apache mountain horses crossed with quarter horses. Should produce stock that can handle both rough terrain and cattle work." He came into the room, sat on the edge of the bed. "You were right about it. Every rancher within 50 miles wants to buy." Naylin shifted Hope to her shoulder, patting her back gently until a small burp emerged. "My father used to say the best horses came from understanding the land they'd work on. Montana breeds are strong. Mix that with Apache knowledge of mountain survival, and you get something special. Like our daughter. Like our daughter." Hope had fallen asleep, milk drunk and content. Naylin rose carefully and placed her in the wooden cradle Cole had carved over the winter. He'd spent hours on it, working late into frozen nights, needing to create something with his hands, something that would last. The cradle was a work of art, really. Smooth curves and intricate carvings of horses and mountains and Apache symbols Naylin had taught him. They stood together, looking down at their sleeping child, and Cole felt his throat tighten with emotion that still took him by surprise, even after a year. The sheer overwhelming gratitude of having this, of having survived to see it. "She looks like Katie sometimes," Naylin said quietly. "Around the eyes, the way she smiles. Does that hurt?" "Not the way it used to. Now it feels like Katie's still here somehow, part of the family even though we never got to keep her." Cole took her hand. "We should visit the grave today. Plant those flowers you've been wanting to put there." Spring crocuses. The purple ones. They were Daniel's favorite. They'd had Katie's remains moved from that forgotten corner of Harlan's property to the Valley Cemetery, buried properly with a headstone that read, Katie Whitehorse Brennan, beloved daughter. Nayland had insisted on including Brennan, making Katie part of their new family, even in death. Cole had carved the stone himself, spent weeks getting every letter perfect. The cemetery had become a place of healing rather than just grief. They visited often, sometimes bringing hope, telling her about the sister she'd never meet and the grandmother she was named for, connecting past and present, making sure the dead weren't forgotten, even as the living moved forward. A knock on the front door interrupted the moment. Cole went to answer and found Father Murphy standing on the porch, his weathered face creased in a smile. "Morning, Cole. Hope I'm not calling too early."
"Never too early for you, Father. Come in."
They settled in the main room with coffee, while Nayland joined them, Hope content in her mother's arms. Father Murphy had become a regular visitor over the past year, his initial act of standing up to Mrs. Sutton having evolved into genuine friendship. "I have news," the priest said. "The territorial office approved your petition. Nayland's school for Apache children can officially open next month." Nayland's face lit up. "Truly? They approved the funding?" "Every penny. The governor himself signed off on it, said it was, quote, high time the territory invested in education for all its children, regardless of heritage," unquote. Father Murphy pulled papers from his coat. "You'll have salary for 2 teachers, supplies for 30 students, and use of the old Miller barn on the edge of town." Over the winter, Nayland had conceived a plan. Use the money from Harlan Cobb's estate to create a school where Apache children could learn to read and write and do arithmetic, while also learning their own language and customs. A place where being native wasn't something to hide, but something to celebrate. The territorial government had resisted at first. Mrs. Sutton and others like her had protested. But Father Murphy had lobbied hard, and Judge Hart had thrown his support behind it, and slowly, grudgingly, approval had come. "When can we start?" Nayland asked. "Whenever you're ready. There are already 12 families who've expressed interest in sending their children. Words spread to the reservation. You might have more students than space." "Then we'll make more space." Nayland looked at Cole, eyes shining. "This is real. It's actually happening." "You made it happen," he said. "This was your dream, your work." That afternoon, they rode to the cemetery. The valley was green now, spring having fully arrived. Wildflowers dotted the hillsides in splashes of yellow and purple and white. The cottonwood trees wore new leaves that rustled in the warm breeze. Everything alive and growing and new. Katie's grave was well tended, the grass around it trimmed, the headstone clean. Nearby, Sarah and Michael's graves stood sentinel, and Cole felt the familiar pang of bittersweet memory. Missing them, grateful for them, carrying them forward. Nalin knelt and began planting the crocuses she'd brought, her hands working the soil with practiced ease. Hope lay on a blanket nearby, gurgling at the sky and trying to catch clouds with chubby fingers. "I wish you could meet her, Katie," Nalin said softly, talking to the grave like she always did. "Your sister, Hope. She's beautiful and strong and so full of life. She laughs at everything, even when there's nothing funny, just pure joy." Her voice caught. "I think you would have been like that too, if you'd had the chance." Cole knelt beside her, added his own flowers to the planting. Michael would have been 5 now, playing with sticks and probably getting into everything. He paused. "I wonder sometimes what they'd think of us, of what we built together. Hope they'd be proud." "They'd be proud," Nayland said firmly. "Both of them. We survived. We healed. We created something good from all that pain. That matters." When the flowers were planted, they sat together in the grass, Hope between them trying to grab at dandelions, and Cole felt peace settle over him like a warm blanket. This was enough. This simple moment. This family. "I have something I want to ask you," Nayland said after a while. "Ask away." "Our wedding. The first one. It was rushed and born from fear. I want to do it again. Properly this time. A celebration, not just a legal protection."
She looked at him, vulnerable and hopeful. "Will you marry me again, Cole Brennan?" He laughed, surprised and delighted.
"Wasn't it supposed to be me asking you?"
"Says who?" "Fair point." He took her hands in his. "Yes, absolutely yes. When?" "Next month, after the school opens. I want to celebrate everything at once. New life, new beginnings, new promises." So they planned a second wedding, and the whole town threw itself into preparation. Mrs. Sutton, reformed and eager to make amends, organized the Ladies' Society to handle decorations. Mr. Chen donated silk ribbons and paper lanterns. Heinrich Bauer forged an iron archway decorated with horseshoes for luck. Even Sheriff Wade offered to direct traffic, though Sheridan was so small that traffic mostly meant preventing horses from eating the flower arrangements. The day arrived bright and warm, the first Saturday in June. They held the ceremony at the ranch, in the field between the house and the new barn, under an enormous oak tree that had stood for probably 100 years and would stand for 100 more.
Chairs had been set up for guests, and every single one was filled. Townspeople, neighboring ranchers, Apache families from the reservation who traveled 2 days to attend. Nalin's uncle Takoda sat in the front row, his weathered face bright with pride. Mateo and Elena served as witnesses again, both dressed in their finest clothes and beaming. Father Murphy stood beneath the oak tree, the iron archway behind him, wrapped in wildflowers and ribbon. He looked out at the assembled crowd and smiled. "We gather today, not for the first time these two have married, but perhaps for the most important time. The first wedding was born from necessity. This one is born from love, from choice, from the conscious decision to stand together, not because the law demands it, but because the heart insists on it." Nalin walked down the makeshift aisle, not given away by anyone, because she belonged to herself first and foremost. She wore a dress that blended both cultures, white lace in the style of American weddings, but beaded with Apache designs her aunt had sewn by hand. Her hair was loose, flowers woven through it, and she carried a bouquet of prairie roses and sage. She was the most beautiful thing Cole had ever seen. When she reached him beneath the oak tree, she handed her bouquet to Elena and took his hands. They faced each other while Father Murphy spoke words about love and commitment and the journey they'd taken together. Then it was time for their vows. Cole went first. "Nalin, when I found you in those trees 1.5 years ago, I thought I was saving you. But the truth is, you saved me. You gave me a reason to live again, a reason to hope, a reason to believe that broken hearts could heal and frozen ground could bloom." His voice cracked. "You gave me a daughter, a home, a future I thought I'd lost forever. I promise to honor that gift, to stand beside you in good times and bad, to be your partner, your friend, your lover, and your family, today and every day, for as long as we both shall live." Tears streamed down Nalin's face, but she was smiling. When she spoke, her voice was strong and clear. "Cole, you taught me that I deserve to be loved, that survival wasn't the same as living, that hope wasn't weakness but strength." She squeezed his hands. "You fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. You saw me not as broken or damaged, but as worthy, as whole. I promise to honor that by living fully, by choosing joy, by building a life with you that celebrates everything we've overcome." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I love you. Not because you saved me, but because you let me save myself while standing beside me. That's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me." Father Murphy was crying now too. Half the congregation was crying, men pulling out handkerchiefs and women openly sobbing. "By the power vested in me by God and the territory of Wyoming, I now pronounce you once again husband and wife. Cole, you may kiss your bride." And he did, long and deep and full of promise, while the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. When they finally broke apart, both laughing through tears, Father Murphy raised his hands. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Cole Brennan, again." The celebration that followed lasted until sunset. There was food enough to feed twice the number of guests, roasted beef and fresh bread and pies of every description. Musicians played, a mix of traditional American reels and Apache songs on drums and flutes.
Children ran wild through the fields, playing games that transcended language and culture. Adults danced and laughed and toasted the happy couple until the stars came out. Cole and Naylin moved through it all hand in hand, accepting congratulations and well wishes, their faces sore from smiling.
Hope was passed from person to person, cooed over and spoiled shamelessly, clearly loving the attention. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, Cole pulled Naylin away from the crowd. They walked to the hill behind the house, the one with the best view of the valley, and sat in the grass, watching their celebration continue below. "Happy?" Cole asked. "Beyond words," Naylin replied. "A year and a half ago, I was a slave. Now I'm a wife, a mother, and soon to be a teacher. How did we get here? One day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of courage at a time." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you think it lasts, this happiness? Or is it just a moment before the next tragedy?" "I think happiness is always just a moment, but we get to choose how many moments we have, how hard we fight to keep them." He kissed the top of her head. "And I choose to fight for as many as I can get." They sat together as the celebration below turned to lantern light and music drifted up the hill. Their friends and family, their community, their life. Everything they'd built from ashes and pain and stubborn refusal to give up. "Cole?" "Yes?" "I'm pregnant again." His heart stopped, then restarted, too fast, too hard. Are you certain?" "As certain as I was with hope, maybe 2 months along, due in January if my counting is right." "January." He pulled her close, felt tears sting his eyes for what felt like the 100th time that day. "We're going to have another baby." "Are you happy?" "I'm terrified and overjoyed in equal measure. But yes. So yes." She laughed, that beautiful sound he never got tired of hearing. "Good, because we're building something here. A family, a legacy, something that lasts." "Yes, we are." The years that followed were not without struggle. Naylin miscarried at 3 months, a loss that devastated them both and took time to heal from. But she got pregnant again and delivered a healthy son they named Daniel Michael. 2 years later, twin girls arrived, Clara and Catherine, named for daughters lost. And finally, when Naylin was 35 and they thought they were done, a 4th son, Samuel Thomas, named for the men who'd stood by them. The ranch prospered. Cole's horse breeding program became legendary, ranchers coming from 3 territories to buy stock. Naylin's school grew from 12 students to over 50, and she trained 3 other teachers to help handle the load. They lived through joy and sorrow in equal measure, watched their children grow, watched the town change, watched the world transform around them. Wyoming became a state in 1890. The frontier closed, the old ways faded into memory. But through it all, they had each other. On their 50th wedding anniversary, January 1937, they renewed their vows one final time. They were both in their 80s now, Cole 86 and Naylin 74, grey-haired and weathered, but still strong. Their children had given them 12 grandchildren, who'd given them 6 great-grandchildren. The ranch house had been expanded twice to accommodate family gatherings, where 3 generations crowded around tables and told stories and laughed until they cried. 50 years, Naylin said that night as they lay in bed, her head on his chest. "Who would have thought?" "I knew," Cole replied, "from the moment I saw you in those trees. I knew you were worth fighting for." "Liar, you didn't know anything except that helping was the right thing to do." "Maybe, but I know now." She lifted her head to look at him. Even at 74, even with lines and grey hair and skin that had seen 7 decades of sun, she was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. "I love you, Cole Brennan." "I love you too, Naylin Brennan. Today and every day. For as long as we both shall live." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and when morning came, they didn't wake up. The doctor said it was their hearts. Both of them gave out within minutes of each other, as if neither could bear to exist without the other. Their children found them still embracing,
peaceful expressions on both their faces. They were buried together in the Valley Cemetery, between the graves of Sarah and Michael on one side and Katie on the other, all the family united at last. The funeral was attended by over 300 people, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, former students from Nayland's school, now adults with children of their own, ranchers who'd bought horses, townfolk who remembered when the Brennans had stood against tyranny, Apache families who'd found hope in the example they'd set. Father Murphy, now 90 and frail, gave the eulogy. He spoke of courage and love and the power of two broken people healing each other. He spoke of legacy, not just in children, but in changed hearts and shifted attitudes, and a world made slightly better because they'd lived in it. Cole and Nayland Brennan taught us that love is a choice, he said, his voice shaking with age and emotion, that healing is possible, that frozen ground can bloom. They lived that truth every day for 50 years, and their story, their love, will outlive us all. 50 years later, on the 100th anniversary of their first meeting, the Brennan family gathered at the ranch for a centennial celebration. The house was a museum now, preserved exactly as it had been when Cole and Nayland lived there. The cradle Cole had carved sat in the nursery. Nayland's teaching materials were displayed in what had been the school. The iron collar that had once bound her hung in a place of honor, with a plaque explaining its significance and the triumph over tyranny it represented. Over 200 descendants attended, great-great-grandchildren who'd never met Cole and Nayland but knew their story. Some had Apache features, some looked white, most were beautiful mixtures of both. A living testament to the bridge they'd built between cultures. The oldest living descendant, Daniel Michael Brennan, at age 96, stood before the assembled family and raised a glass. To Cole and Nayland, he said, his voice strong despite his age, who taught us that love conquers all, that courage is standing up when it's easier to stay down, that family is not about blood, but about choice. They gave us more than life. They gave us an example of how to live. To Cole and Nayland, the crowd echoed. And on the hill behind the house, as the sun set over the ranch they'd built together, 200 voices sang old songs in 2 languages, celebrating the love story that had changed all their lives. In the Valley Cemetery, flowers bloomed on 2 graves, purple crocuses and prairie roses, planted by children and tended by grandchildren and great-grandchildren, who made sure the memory never faded. The headstone was simple. Cole Brennan, 1851 to 1937. Nayland Brennan, 1863 to 1937. Together in life, together in death, together forever. And beneath that, words Nayland had requested be carved before she died. Frozen ground can bloom, broken hearts can heal, love endures. The wind whispered through the valley, carrying the scent of flowers and the echo of laughter from the gathering on the hill. The sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The stars emerged, infinite and eternal. And somewhere, in whatever place waits beyond, 2 souls who'd found each other against all odds looked down at the family they'd created, the legacy they'd left, and smiled. They'd survived, they'd healed, they'd won, and their love, forged in frozen ground and baptized in blood, had indeed endured forever.